entertainingly difficult as I've now hit the button. Now check the live streaming bracket. Da-da-da-da. That's going. Then it's going. Gaming. Jim Sterling. And turn chat on because for some reason you have to enable chat when it's like I'm staring right at the window.
You have to acknowledge chat as a person.
I don't want to. Copy video URL. Quickly go to the books of face and the tweets of Twitter. Chat. Keep that going. I hear you, person in background, trying to make noise. Are you trying to ruin this podcast? Oh, she said yes. It's all over, boys. The wham.
Damn, you've got a saboteur in your misc.
Yeah, the whammon just coming in to just destroy what we want. Okay. Da-da-da-da. I don't. Is the link supposed to be above or below the actual text that you want to say when you're with the post? I think that it's supposed to be below so the link doesn't distract from the thing you're actually trying to say.
Which is this on Facebook?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter where you paste the link. The pop-up that people click into will always be below the post.
Hmm. And post.
God, Jim is looking at me.
God, yeah, he's like, look. Hold on, let me full screen this for the audience. So now anyone who's watching just sees a face full of just Jim just staring at you. Oh Jesus. Da-da-da-da-da. Now go to the tweets of Twitter.
He looks so sad in that screenshot.
he's like, please just end it.
It's like a 50-year-old granny who never got to travel.
That's a face full of regret.
It's like
I never got to go to the Philippines. Oh wait, no, we've got the closest person that could probably imitate Jim's accent. Hey, Luke, could you just start saying like offensive things towards Jim in like a mock British voice?
Not off the top of my head. I'd actually have to listen to him speak and then mimic it.
Fair enough.
Because it's not quite like a general regional thing. It's more just he sounds like him. Most British people don't sound like that.
Well, when I try to do it, it sounds a bit like Ringo.
Yeah, a little too much Aussie there.
Yeah.
Well, it's because too much being hit in the back of the head with a shovel.
Oh no.
It's the pretentious. You got to increase the pretentious in your voice to get Jim.
Sometimes you can't really be political. Yeah, the Aussie just keeps trying to like bash itself back in. You're just like,
it's like a fucking dingo just coming on through.
Maybe the dingo ate you, baby.
You have to push your nose up to get it up into the whiny voice, because he's also like, he's speaking in his studio shed, whatever the fuck he's using. He's actually speaking.
His studio shed. He's just in the middle of the woods recording videos.
Yeah, it's literally just like a green screen out like his back garden.
Alright, tweets have been sent. And those who have already been listening to our voices, I guess welcome to people trying to imitate a British accent but sounding more like an Australian. Today we will just be talking about things because that is what people do. As Jim just continues to just stare deep and deep into our souls. Just let
He's
it
disappointed in our objectivity.
in our objectivity. Yes. So that our first topic will of course be this face right here, Mr. Jim Sterling, and not this video in particular. I was just warming them up as I need to pause that. I had to get out of full screen, and for some reason it was just not letting me without hitting the video. But not today. Today we will be looking at his objective view of video game reviewing. Now, before we start that, all of us are fans of the good old every frame a pause, and objectivity is a common phrase amongst us fans. So, what would you guys how would you guys like to describe how you objectively try to keep yourself to that standard when it comes to the things that you watch? That sentence probably sounded awful.
I mean, it
Well,
really is just having standards, logical consistency, artistic merit. It's like, imagine you're in art school. It's like anything you produce is graded against a standard. It's not that far in a concept. It's just actually putting in the mental effort to do it.
Yeah, and kind of one of the problems being is that objectivity, for some reason, as of like a few years ago, has kind of started to be looked on as almost this thing you need to say in like hushed tones, like, no, art is always subjective. Like you can't like rate things on an objective scale. Meanwhile, as I'm dating an artist, and like she's had to tell me about like there is an objective standard. That's how you get graded for making art. And it's like, yeah, no matter what, that standard has always been there. And I feel
well, I think there's a false narrative out there that in order for you to be objective, you have to, frown on subjectivity.
yeah,
And I disagree with that.
yeah,
I would say, especially when it comes to art, some of the best objective quality art is the one that makes you feel the most subjective. And the
exactly.
better it has that consistency, the better that emotional payoff is going to be because you're going to be more invested.
And sometimes something being objectively bad can actually improve its subjective value because you can just
Absolutely.
laugh at it. Wild Wild West is a shit fucking movie.
But it's a lot of fun.
Oh, it is like
Exactly.
it is so much fun. I showed my girlfriend it, and she, like, the second that mech spider came in, she was just like, "What movie are we watching?" And I turned to her and said, "The best movie in the world." And it just kept getting more and more fun, and like, and I would almost want to say like objectivity kind of allows the like movies that you previously liked. It allows you to finally kind of, I don't want to say you can finally view them as an adult, but sort of in that manner where you can like, all right, why did I like this? Like, why did I, like, after all these years, why did I like Saving Private Ryan more than just the shooty bang bang? And it's like, oh, it's
Yeah, it's like the objective standard is just diagnostic. It's actually breaking something down. Say, why did this make me feel that way?
mm-hmm.
What is it about the way this story was told that other stories are not? Other similar stories can be told, but they won't get the same effect. There's a difference there. Let's try to quantify it, and
Right.
that's where we get those standards, and it's where we get a lot of the rules of writing, and
Mm-hmm.
we start labeling cliches like Deus Ex Machina. It's like that was an actual trope in Greek theater
Yeah,
that they
exactly.
recognized as a technique,
Yeah,
where
God in
a
the
story would
machine.
be happening and a god character would just turn up. Because in Greek stories, that kind of happened a lot.
Yeah, even
The god was kind of around.
yeah, like the Iliad is one of the best examples. It's either Apollo or Artemis just straight up just comes in and just fucking murks fucking oh, why am I Achilles, there we go. Just helps this guy just aim an arrow right at his heel and then he dies.
Yeah, and then he tries to pick a fight with a river.
Yeah.
But And the Iliad itself is like it plays out like at least the portion of Achilles and Agamemnon when they're actually laying siege to the city. It's just a play-by-play of the bloodiest fucking field sport in history. And
Mm-hmm.
the gods are like they're placing wagers, they're assuming direct control of the NPCs. It's like they're doing all kinds of crazy shit to rig the game. And the whole story is just that, and it's something soldiers would tell each other over fucking campfires and spice it up with all kinds of shit, which is why the version we have is just so fucking bananas.
Yeah, and hell, and even when you think about it, like some things just don't make no damn sense, and it then just makes you laugh. Like in the Odyssey, when he finally gets home, he just suddenly Athena just helps him kill all the people that have been lusting after his wife while he's been gone. It's like, oh, thanks, literal god that just showed up out of nowhere.
Well, and with the objective standard, it kind of goes back to what we were talking about with the politics.
Mm-hmm.
Those that believe in objectivity, they want both. They want objective quality and they want subjective quality.
Yeah.
But the people that are like, there's no such thing as objectivity in art, are just totally on the subjective train and they deny that objectivity even exists.
Hell.
Except they don't. They don't live up to their own standard in that because they'll say everything is subjective. But you ask them name five really shit movies, they're all gonna say it's like pretty much the same things because they have things they'll agree on when it comes to having standards. It's
Mm-hmm.
just you're not allowed to apply them to the things they like.
Yeah. And it's like with EFAP when they're finally covering somebody you like I kind of initially had that reaction with Cosmonaut because I hadn't seen his prequel video. So when they were covering, I'm like, hey, leave Cosmonaut alone. It's like and then it's just like, oh no, oh no, and it just kept getting worse and worse. And then with The Last of Us 2, it's like, okay, I'm just gonna. You're no
I
longer.
was similar with Legal because he actually does have a lot of pretty good videos
Yes,
and some
legal
entertaining
eagle.
ones. It's just that particular one was just so fucking tismy.
Yeah, and you'd think there would be a lot of objectivity in the subject that is the law, because the law, depending on where you are, no, not just in not where you are, it's just it's supposed to be this finite thing, this like these sets of rules that people must obey. and if those rules need to be like, yes, those rules can be changed, but it almost has to have like an example of something happening before that rule can be changed. Like said, like even like the civil rights movement and Jim Crow, a lot of African Americans had to unfortunately pass away in very violent means before all that stuff happened. But but with like say like the Captain Marvel Legal Eagle video, no, what she did was just straight up assault, regardless of if it was even provoked.
And even when it came to the provoking part, he'll like hold up the actual letter of the law and he'll go through it. But in most of his other videos, he'll say is like, okay, this thing does actually fall in within the wording of the law, but there's not a
Mm-hmm.
judge in America who would convict on it because no actual harm is done. So he's
Right.
usually good about that. It's just again that one video.
Uh,
I mean, he might have a couple others that are like that. I just haven't seen them. I haven't seen all of his stuff.
Ninja, is there anyone who EFAP has covered that you were like, hey, that's my guy?
No, I've kind of lucked out on that part. Most of the critics that I watched before I discovered EFAP, embarrassingly enough, but I mean, Stuckman at one point was one of my go-tos. Angry Joe, Jeremy Johns, but they were all very, for lack of a better term, very vanilla. When it came to critical review, and so it was very refreshing to dive into Mauler and Drinker and Rags and just
Mm-hmm.
really get some more content that I could chew on. I mean, most of those Stuckman and John's reviews are under 10 minutes and they don't really say much, especially in the spoiler review or the spoiler free stuff,
So
So it's like,
so Stuckman, I definitely agree. Stuckman doesn't say a damn thing. Jeremy Johns, it's kind of hit or miss on whether he'll he's very concise on like whether or not you truly should see the film because
right,
he's not really grading on he's definitely not grading on an objective scale. He's definitely because his ratings are even like no, his worst film rating is dog shit. Basically saying like no, this film is just irritating. And then he's got the
right.
caveats of like this would be a great film if you're drunk or if it's just passable. A great time, no alcohol required.
Well, and they're kind of, bite size, quick and easy to consume, and some of them can be fairly entertaining.
Uh huh.
What I will give him a lot of credit for is he was one of those reviewers that, when the sequel trilogy first came out, I mean, of course, like
Yep.
a lot of us, he was super excited and was all behind it. But then once Last Jedi came out, you could tell at first he wanted to defend it, but eventually he was like, nope, it's shit.
Yeah.
And so I was, and as much of a Star Wars fan as he claims to be, I was, impressed that he would actually come out and agree when so many others, are still actively dying on that hill.
Yeah. And I think while I really didn't like what Cosmonaut became, what definitely kind of instantly made me turn on somebody was when Cinema Wins was covering Rise of Skywalker. Just pretend it's what you wanted, and it's like, how about no? How about go
That
fuck
sounds like
yourself?
something a rapist would say to their victim. Like, just pretend you like it.
Yeah, just
It's like,
pretend
oh
you
my
wanted
God.
this, and it's like, what?
Yeah,
No.
what is wrong with you?
That's like that's yeah, that's literally just burying your head in the ground and saying just enjoy it while it's here. And it's like, whoa, no. um, oh, then then there's the ones that have always been kind of bad. Whenever they covered Stuckman, you truly realize how just empty his reviews are. Like his Attack of the Clones one, he's just like, Count Dooku, he's a handsome gentleman, played by Christopher
Yeah.
Lee, and it's just like, okay, I could say a bunch of things about Count Dooku in like 20 seconds, like that are all like Christopher Lee's amazing acting is the way he holds himself amongst all these other actors because he's like the fucking oldest one there.
Well, and if you think about it, he wasn't in the prequel movies for very long, but there's a reason that they went after such a big name actor to play that part
Mm-hmm.
because of the amount of gravitas he brought to the role. Like you knew that this was somebody important. You knew that this was somebody getting shit done just because of Christopher Lee.
Exactly.
And George knew that. George wasn't stupid.
Yeah, I would never say George is stupid. I would say George is just kind of. He's not stupid. He's just kind of crazy and not and kind of.
I think he was a victim of his own success. I mean, if you go back and look at a lot of the behind the scenes stuff on the OT, there was a lot of checks and balances. Like he had a lot of creative freedom, but he didn't have carte blanche to do whatever he wanted. But when it came time for the prequels, he had already built up such a reputation of being this master that nobody on that set was going to tell him no.
Yeah,
Nobody was going to say, "Hey, George, maybe that's not such a good idea."
that's why whenever I do my George Lucas impression, I always start with, "I created Star Wars."
Created Star Wars. It's like
We just
poetry.
didn't have
It
that.
rhymes.
Oh
It's-
God, that fucking line.
And it's like one of
Even
my.
the fact that like nobody said no, and all of his ideas went through. It meant that even though the movies were kind of a shit show, there was so much other stuff that came out of them. The fucking games, the stories, the comics,
Oh,
the animation.
absolutely. Yeah. Whether you love the prequels or whether you hate them, there's at least a cohesive creative vision from start to finish.
Yeah, and it's just kind
And
of
there's
just
a
not
world
there.
for other people to play in.
And it's kind of just
Oh,
not
yeah.
there for the sequels. Like,
He took his sandbox and he turned it into an entire playground
yeah,
for all these people to launch this, expanded universe and really just explore and create. And he didn't shut anything off the way the sequels did. Everything was left very open-ended.
yeah, and he knew when character death would actually matter. I don't know if you guys knew this, but during the old expanded universe, Like, there were a few golden rules. You can't kill the main three, because it's Luke Skywalker, Han Solo, and Leia Organa. You can't fucking touch them. You can hurt them, but you can't touch them. And almost every decision when it came to death had to actually be run through Lucas. So when Chewbacca died during the Yuuzhan Vong War, that had to be run through Lucas, and so did when Mara died at the hands of Jason Solo. Yeah, all of that had to be. It was like, hey George, you're kind of responsible a little bit for these characters. Are we allowed to do this thing? And he's like, yes, you can do this. I created Star Wars. Yes, George, I know.
He just sat in a throne, and people brought ideas before him, and he's just like there chewing on a burger, like yeah, sure, go ahead, I made Star Wars.
He's having his little sad food court meal.
Well, but I mean, that's kind of what the expanded universe was. If you think about it, it was like organized fan fiction.
Yeah. And one would argue, like, sometimes it would be a massive miss. Like, let's not forget there's that famous picture of Han Solo fighting the giant honey badger, and it's like, what is this shit?
He wanted to learn how to earthbound.
Then you have, like, like, I remember, like, it was right as I joined EFAP posting, there was a conversation about the Yuuzhan Vong War, and I immediately was just like, I must immediately dive headfirst into my favorite moment in all of Star Wars. And, could you imagine Rey fighting the Vong? I don't know if you guys know about this storyline.
I can't even imagine Rey fighting the people that they showed her fighting in the sequel trilogy. So, I mean...
You threw
the shit's happening in the movie, and you're just like, yeah, nah, don't buy it.
I don't buy it, not for a minute, no.
Wasn't it?
They literally had to airbrush the fucking knife out, okay? That's how bad it was.
Wasn't it Shad who said, like, even he could fucking kick Rey's ass?
I wouldn't be surprised.
Like, I remember, like, he was, I think it was, while they were talking about The Mandalorian, he was talking about how he would just wait for Rey to just overextend and telegraph her move, and then he'd just simply go whap, and just kill her.
It just feels like there's so many small tweaks that you could make that would have improved everything greatly. Like, I think they should have given her a double-bladed lightsaber.
Yeah, they should have. That's what was supposed to happen.
Oh, you mean like the switchblade knife?
No, not that fucking monstrosity. No. The fucking pocket knife, she's gonna chop her own legs off.
So that's a good idea in terms of storage and like traveling capacity.
It's really not though, because it's still a big metal stick. It's just a slightly shorter metal stick.
Well,
it's now wider.
Well, no, I was gonna say if you, I'm trying to remember because wait, hold on. The only person that was able to use this was Pong Krell. And Pong Krell from the Clone Wars was the same race as Dexter Jetster. So he actually had the torso space to actually be able to carry two of those things without it looking clumsy. Meanwhile, Daisy Ridley's like a 90-pound woman who, like...
Didn't Maul's lightsaber, which is what I consider to be the original double-bladed lightsaber, didn't his actually, like, split in half? Like, you could disconnect the two?
No.
I think somebody cut it in the middle.
No, yeah,
Obi-Wan was like one of the blades was still able to activate, so he was able to use it as
in the old expanded universe, he created his double bladed literally by just taking two lightsabers and then just welding them together like with a fucking soldering gun, basically. And so when Obi-Wan cut it in half, one of the ends was still functional.
Okay. Because I think with the whole, they set her up with the staff. And so it would have, I would have been able to buy it more, her going from the staff combat to a double-bladed lightsaber. It still would have been a stretch. I still would have been like, she might need some more training than that, but it would have made a little bit more sense.
I think she
would have actually flowed from what we saw before, which would be a nice touch.
I honestly wanted to say, like, she should have just never had the lightsaber in general and just been one of those Force users that just enhances their weapon to be able to just use it. But that's an old EU comic. That's Knights of the Old Republic, where like Exar Kun's master like used the Force to make his staff lightsaber proof.
ultimately, if I was gonna have control of it, I mean, Finn would have been the main character anyway. I feel like that's what they were really going for.
Yeah, I would have
Or
made
even if Finn wasn't the main character, he at least should have been the Jedi. And then
Yeah.
if Rey's the main character, have her be, the rogue. She's the scrappy, fucking grew up in shit heap nowhere. She knows how to fend for herself, so she's the resourceful one. And then fucking Finn's going on this massive emotional journey, learning how to use the Force. And then you have somebody else come in and stand in as, I don't know, I guess the Leia, maybe Poe.
Yeah, because Rey would have been like Han Solo 2.0, basically, and then Finn could have been Luke 2.0. And
My
I guess Poe could have kind of had a Leia-ish arc.
Yeah, because he
see,
was a commander in the Resistance, so he would have been like Leia,
yeah,
someone of rank, someone who helps bring them into the fold. All that
Poe. Poe was my favorite in The Force Awakens, mainly because he was the only one that looked like they were having fun, as they were like. Because my favorite scene is when they're in the TIE fighter. When they're
Yeah.
like
The only thing I
Poe's
don't
just
like about Poe was his introduction, I guess, with the whole that scene in the town with him and
Yes.
Kylo
Yeah,
is
when
just so tonally fucked.
yeah, once I watched the breakdown, I was like, oh my god, this
the
scene
villain
is so
genocide, and
fucking.
he's cracking wise.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah,
it's so fucking
was
backwards.
that was a little much, you know. Well, and it's like he's mad at first, you know, because he's watching them all, you know, get slaughtered, and so he even comes out of hiding and risks himself, you know, and it's like, but then immediately 2 minutes later he's cracking jokes, and it's like, wait a minute, weren't you just really really pissed off
Yeah,
a
you
minute
shot.
ago?
Yeah, you were so mad you shot at Kylo Ren, but then the second you're brought up to him, you go, "So who talks first? You talk first. I talk first." And it's like, "Oh, aren't you supposed to be really mad right now?" And it was,
Yeah, it's just, you know, he just watches people get slaughtered, and who talks first?
"You talk first. I talk first."
So much potential.
Yeah,
I mean, Force Awakens, not a fantastic film, but there was a lot of potential there.
I was about to
It
make.
could have been a very good setup.
I was about to make a joke about how sidetracked we got when I'm like, "Oh, wait a minute, we're talking about the Mandalorian." So this is later. So this technically still works.
And yeah, I'm still behind on the context for that. So I've seen the first episode of season 2.
Yeah,
I
what
think
we
we're up
watch.
to episode 3 now.
Just
For
yeah,
Oh,
we're at
shit.
4. That's why I just kept middle of the night, me being a skeleton, just like I haven't gotten his response, and then you finally respond like, "Oh, but he still hasn't seen the Mandalorian." All right, and then I just slowly wheeled myself out of the queue. I was like, "All right, let's watch the vid." You were just like, and you basically just went, "Wyatt, go to sleep."
Pretty much, yeah. Because I knew you were going to be fucking trying to stream later as well. And if we watch The Mandalorian, we're going to keep pausing. So we would have just been streaming up to this point, and you would actually be dying.
Welcome.
yeah,
Welcome to
as soon as I knew what we were covering, I was like, all right, Thursday night watch episode 1 through 3, and then Friday night I watched episode 4.
You were lucky, Luke, because then you missed out on because that means you missed out on Frog Lady, and
Oh, I've seen the memes.
Oh,
I'm
I'm
caught
Jesus.
up on the issue around Frog Lady, and I assume that when we're talking about them, we're going to go in roughly chronological order. So I'll be
yeah.
like
Oh,
the neutral.
I've got some things to say about the Frog Lady.
I
Ugh.
Can we all just say episode 1 like on a quick tangent before we then like talk about the main thing that is in front of us? That episode 1 was actually the most entertaining, just because it kind of was just focusing on entertaining you, like explosions, shots, jetpacks, clap, damn it.
Well, there was a lot of you know, member berries and keys jangling for
Yeah.
sure. Look, we played the games too. We know what a crate dragon is. You
Except
know,
it's
it's like,
not. They turned it into fucking tremors. A crate,
yeah,
a crate dragon doesn't burrow into the sand. It walks atop it.
Actually, one thing I did, well, there's a couple of things I thought of after we finished watching it. The first one was like, I immediately text you, like, as soon as we weren't actually fucking
Yeah.
on the call anymore. It's like, hang on, where the fuck did sand people get wood? And then the other was, you know how there's a Monster Hunter movie being made,
Yes.
and it looks like absolute shit? That episode of The Mandalorian is kind of what I want a Monster Hunter movie to be like.
Yeah, just a bunch of.
But better, right?
Oh, but yeah,
Okay.
and with more logical consistency of where the fuck they're getting the things they're trying to come up with.
I was, I like how I was more focused on like, I don't know, like episode one just kind of just had this brought this big smile to my face. I guess I'm gonna need to watch it again because I was just like this is nice explosions. I guess keys jangling got me.
Well, and that's okay. That's why I have to watch a lot of things twice, because the first time I don't necessarily have the objectivity lens on. You know, I'm just watching it to experience it naturally. And so I don't always catch every flaw the first time I go through because I just want to experience it. And then I go back and I'm like, maybe that wasn't as good as I thought.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, there was, I think the biggest thing that stuck out to me was there's that little, you almost call it like an intro scene with where he's in the arena and the John Leguizamo's the evil alien.
Oh
And
my
he
God.
has that sort of like, you know, he hangs him up and leaves him to die. And you're like, oh wow, you know, Mandalorian going a little dark here. And that's great. But then as soon as the rest of the episode goes, he's like he goes from like renegade to full paragon.
Mm-hmm.
He's like super altruistic, super let's save the day, even at the expense of putting himself and the child and his whole mission at very, very great risk. And you're like, this isn't even the same character. Unless he's massively bipolar.
Which he might be, because who he helps and who he just fucking annihilates seems to just be whoever pisses him off first.
Dude, one of these days, like, I'm gonna have to really sit myself down. I'm gonna make a meme about that fucking Gamorrean that just jumps off the fighting ring and then just slams onto the fucking bench. I was like, I don't know what song I'm gonna use. Cause it's just like, cause it's just so like, he thinks he's got it and then just, just misses. Like, what was your plan?
And he's out of the fight after that, isn't he?
Yeah, he is.
Yeah, he's done.
He plants and stays down.
All right. Now that we've gone on a 32-minute tangent on objectivity and talking about Star Wars, before we then talk about Star Wars, let's let our old not our old pal. It's like that South Park quote. You're not my buddy, guy. Let's let Jim take it away. As I come on. I need to quickly get the soundbar to go. Not the soundbar. I need to fast forward a little bit, because who knows
Alright,
if.
while you were getting the video set up, I'm just gonna disappear for a couple of seconds.
All right, because I wouldn't know. Is Jim's theme song an actual song? I could have sworn it's actually like a song made by like an actual band, not just one of those like royalty free YouTube songs.
It could be. I didn't pay enough attention to it on the last video, I guess.
Well, it's because he only did it for like 2 seconds. He's shortened his intro quite a lot. And as I quickly look on Twitter, Jimquisition theme song. It's called "Born Depressed" Drill Queen by Drill Queen. Or it could be the other one. Oh, yeah, it's Born Depressed.
Well, that sounds like an actual song by an actual band.
Yeah. I'm quickly going through like wikis and stuff to see like if it's theme song was initially used. Oh yeah. It is an actual song because Jim was originally using it without their permission. And then the band later approved of the song, saying that they were regular viewers of the program. I hope they're not now.
Yeah, I've always wondered how some of the bigger YouTubers manage to get away with that kind of stuff, because there's a lot of them that will use, you know, real music in their stuff all the time, and I'm like, how do they just because the EFAP guys are always having to pause for copyright and stuff, and it's like, do you just reach a point where you have a large enough audience that they don't come after you for it, or
No, if I had to guess, that it's similar to that Mueller was saying. Pre-recorded and all that stuff, video can get away with it a lot easier than a live stream, because we almost got shot down just because we were watching a dark matter video, and I was like, is it the video itself or is it the music that's in it? Because I kind of have been thinking about this over like the past few days. If Dark Matter copyrighted his own videos, which I'm not sure how one would even do that, if that's even possible, but that's not the point. If he somehow had, and the fact that we were live streaming it, like, put it under the algorithm, and they were just like, hey, you guys are streaming copywritten material, I think I would be uber pissed, because I'd be like, oh, you make, like, whole running gags on how, like, the Prophet Muhammad, like, is literally just a big censor bar, and whenever he talks, it's just the bleep noise. So it's like, oh, and then to do that and fucking censor through copyright, that'd be a dick move. That's if, like, once again, that's if that was even what was happening, and wasn't just YouTube algorithm going like, music, get rid of it.
right?
Because I don't think you can copyright whole YouTube videos. I used to say that I understood copyright, and nowadays I'm just like, it exists now.
I think it's one of those ever-changing beasts.
Yeah.
And I'm back. Speaking of ever-changing beasts.
Gross.
I'm going to go out on a limb and say that this objective review is not going to be 100% objective.
Oh, it's going to
Well,
be...
it is. It's just going to be the same joke as the other one, where he's not actually saying anything.
Mm-hmm.
Well, at least you have the decency to make this like a third of the length, so...
Yeah, it's only 5 minutes. Oh, no. Come on, watch together. Don't be doing that thing. For some reason, I have to fucking hit the actual play button.
Hi, Jim Sterling here. Now, we have had quite a week, and I don't like to miss a Monday. So, when schedules become so tied up that I can't do an episode, I have my art director, Justin McDaniel, go through the vaults and see what we've got in our...
Oh, did the video art...
do a remaster, because what's good for the gaming industry is good for us.
I'll just refresh the page.
Yeah, you should, because... Okay, what is going on when it comes to this? I don't know about you guys. My controls don't work when I'm using Watch Together. Like, for some reason, I have to actually, like, This might be better if I actually... I probably should. I was about to mess with the stream and just make it, shrink it down to just the actual size of the window, because for some reason only the actual play button, like on the bar, works, and when you full screen it, it's just not gonna work. Like,
yeah, I haven't full screen mine, but I haven't tried. I don't want to be that guy, but is all the red and black giving anybody else like some Nazi vibes?
Well, the podium and the flag behind him, and yeah, it's all So yeah.
My eyes just widened as I just fucking realized it. I was like, oh my god. There's a reason why when everybody fucking does the red and black, they make the comparison like, oh yeah, it's because that was the color scheme that was known for, like, bringing out those vibes. And yeah, no wonder he switched to pink.
Yeah.
Alright, let's see.
The pink and that, like, particular shade of blue. And
yeah.
Together, it's the bisexual lighting, I think it's called. I know a couple of different lefty YouTubers will use it.
Let's see. Let's play the video for a second.
Almost everything it does, but this one case is a good thing, because it means I don't miss a Monday. Not yet, anyway. So, with God of War out and...
We can hear the video a tiny bit from you, Luke.
Alright, I'll turn it down a touch.
I was gonna say you could just switch to push to talk that way. That way you don't have to mess with any more
But
of your
the way it was
settings.
set up there before, where there was no echo, that was literally me just going to the video and turning the volume down and
Oh,
I
okay.
can hear it, but it doesn't go through the mic. So
Mm.
you can try it now.
People tugging their short and curlies about
Alright, we're good.
reviews, we figured it's a good time to remind everyone of what an objective review looks like. Eh?
Okay, Jim, come on.
To
No,
enjoy
that's
that,
pat it out.
Final Fantasy XIII
Subtlety, Jim.
is a video game released on the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360. It was developed by Square Enix. It stars characters. One of the characters is called Lightning, and that is the main character of the game that can be played with a controller. The game's story is about Lightning and a collection of other characters who must fight some other characters called Falsey and save a planet called Cocoon. The story has a beginning and an ending.
Alright, I think we're already seeing, like, the fucking, vibes that he's going for.
You disingenuous sumbitch.
Yeah, he's
Except this video is actually better.
well, yeah,
somehow.
because before we started this, we were watching his, like, political videos so I could get these two all riled up and try to get them angry now.
It's
No.
not even that. It's just the clips he's using, the fucking point and ding, and it's better
Well,
than the fucking show reel of stock photos for no reason.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny that this is what they think our side does.
Yeah, they think we just take the soul out of things, and we're just like, Star Wars is a movie released in 1972. And
But you can tell that they've never actually watched any of like Mahler's content because he's very passionate
yeah, it's like how
in his reviews and his analysis. It's just
it's like
facts.
how with Quentin. Quentin was like told so much that he should just check out one of Mahler's videos that Quentin just got so angry he was like, fuck off. And it's like, that's really disingenuous.
Well, and I mean, I guess call me a vulture or whatever, but I mean, why would I be disappointed if somebody's offering me, not only is it content I like, but it's like 5 hours of content I like? Yeah,
Oh,
why wouldn't I check that out?
Oh yeah, EFAP is so great for the idea of just like, yeah, I could just put
I
it
went
in
back
my
and watched
ear.
all of Mahler's, like, his Dark Souls 2 series, his Soma,
Yeah, his Soma
all
and
those
Amnesia.
videos, and just watching them on like a playlist, and just it's like if the content is good, I'm gonna want more of it, whether it's in 5 or 10 minute bites or whether it's in hour-long chunks.
Mm-hmm.
Or
It
especially,
shouldn't
like,
matter.
The really long chunks. I'm someone who's like, when I was playing games, it's like I don't really play a lot of new ones. If I just want to chill out, I'll load up a game I like, put some podcasts on in the background, and I'll just fucking chill out. So I was used to having, like, I'll find a podcast and I'll just listen to it all in one go, and then I just came across his Dark Souls series before, like, the whole Last Jedi thing even happened. And yeah, it was just something I had on in the background. It was something I enjoyed. I obviously never expected it to blow up into whatever the fuck EFAP is now. Some Lovecraftian monster looming over YouTube.
Well, I love how
Spreading nonsense memes and sports everywhere.
I love how with EFAP 9 and EFAP 9 and 8, they're just like, oh man, this is our longest yet. We're going for 6 hours. And it looks at current EFAP where their 100th episode was 3 parts in 32 hours. it's just like, yeah, this is so short. And oh jeez.
So does everyone here have any, actual experience with this particular game that he's reviewing? And I'll use that term very loosely.
Okay, so Final Fantasy, I have a very back and forth relationship with the Final Fantasy games. I have played a little bit of 7, I've played a little bit of 10. I got like halfway through 10, I think. And I've gotten like a couple chunks into 15. I like 15 better because 15 actually lets you it actually lets you play the game because I'm not a big fan of turn-based combat. Persona
Blasphemy.
Persona kind of does it really well, but I think at the okay. I think it doesn't help when I'm not watching, when I'm playing something like Pokemon, especially the old Pokemons, where it was just like, watch this pixel shake for a second. That indicates that it has attacked, and it's like, oh, okay. Like, I know they're limited by the technology they have. Then I play something like Persona, where it's like, oh, these full 3D animations, like, and summoning the personas to do their attacks and all that stuff. It's actually really cool to look at, and plus it's got a killer soundtrack. And some I don't know. I guess that's just my old teenage goopy goblin gamer brain kicking in, where I'm just like, just let me play the game.
I don't know. I grew up on the turn-based stuff. Back when JRPGs were huge in the '90s.
Mm-hmm.
So that's 7, 8, 9. That was my bread and butter when I was a kid. So I mean, I've done a lot with the Final Fantasy series. Now, I think everything after 10 got a little wonky because they've been walking that line between the turn-based and the more real-time action.
Mm-hmm.
But story-wise, I mean, even back then, I didn't think every single one of them was a winner. I mean, you had your good ones and your not so good ones, but as a general rule, I would say I'm a Final Fantasy fan, and I think he's taking a game that I haven't played this one specifically, but I know Final Fantasy in general is just absolutely chock full of tisms.
Mm-hmm. Because it's
So he's taking a game that is very emotional and psychological and philosophical even, and just kind of going, characters happen, and it just makes me go, Jim, you
yeah,
douche.
it's like, yeah, you're missing the point. Shall we continue, my friends?
We shall.
As
And a
soon
middle-
there we go. Oh, fuck's sake! I don't like the idea that I have to keep fucking
And a
exiting
middle
full
bit.
screen just to get this
Final
working.
Fantasy XIII belongs to the role-playing game genre of video games. More specifically, a genre that some people dub JRPG, with J standing for Japanese. Final Fantasy XIII was developed in Japan, which would have made this genre designation accurate. The game has things in it that other JRPGs have, such as leveling up and weapons and shops. The battle system is a battle system. In this battle system, players select commands for one character, while other characters are controlled by the game's AI. Players can manually designate commands or let the AI decide which course of action is best. There is a system called the Paradigm Shift, which is new to Final Fantasy XIII, and it allows players to pre-program how characters behave, and the player can swap these behaviors.
Alright, so there is an objective way to view this. When it comes to the gameplay, you can objectively rate the combat by, well, comparing it to the previous games. It is a sequel, after all. So,
Well, I think with a game like Final Fantasy, that becomes a little bit hard to do because every installment of the franchise typically has its own unique system. So they're not sequels in the sense that they have common threads that tie them all together, but like the combat from 7 to 8 or 8 to 9 is very different.
oh, I didn't know that. I thought it kind of remained the same up until like 13, where
Well,
they tried to make
there's
it more
common
active.
similarities in that, like, you have magic, you have things that you can summon. It's turn based, but there's differences in, like, he's talking about the paradigm thing. That was something that was specific to this, whereas like 8 used a magic draw system and 7 used materia. So every game kind of had its own unique system, but I, it's hard to tell what he's saying because he's kind of not saying anything at all, and I think that's kind of his joke. But it's very hard to examine what he's saying because he's not really saying anything.
Yeah, he's just trying to poke fun. And one could say like, oh, this is before all that stuff was being a real issue, because this video itself that was being remastered is like 5 years old. But I would say like, no, it has not aged well, because especially with how he with the politics video, since he referenced this, it's like, oh no, that thought process that he has just isn't working.
Well,
Yeah,
and
also-
it,
Sorry, go ahead.
this has the decency of at least being a short, 5.5 minute video. But in just these few short minutes, it's like the joke doesn't work. And, comedy in general is timing, and he's just dragging this one joke out. And it just, I mean, I guess if somebody laughed in the first 20 to 30 seconds, they might continue to laugh, but you're really banking a lot on whether or not that joke lands when you do a video like this. At least with something like Gedelb, there's like it has an overall theme to it, but then it has individual jokes in it. This is just the same joke, one note stretched out. And I feel like his political video or apolitical video was going to be this, but instead of it being 5 minutes, it would be 16 minutes.
Well,
Jesus.
well, it kind of doesn't, because he, like, with the apolitical one, since I watched it all the way, and that's what finally made me snap and be like, nope, we're talking about Jim, is the fact he breaks it and then says that being objective is impossible, and then he says, at least for him, and I'm like, Jim, maybe it is impossible for you, but objectivity itself is not impossible. I may just be diving too deep in an issue that just wasn't actually there in that video, but it's just kind of his overall philosophy, and it's like I just don't agree.
And the sentiment that you can't really be objective in a review is something that's been around for ages. It just wasn't really a shit flinging fest on Twitter. But
Mhm.
even back then, it's like, this video was made because people were like, maybe leave some of your opinions out and just assess what the game does. And he's just like, no, that's literally impossible. It cannot be done.
Yeah,
Even though there are other people doing it.
I believe he says like a review itself is based off opinion, and it's like that's not technically true. A review could just be telling like what the mechanics are and then saying like any inherent issues. Like, as much as I kind of really didn't like what Jay said, KOTOR does at times have bullet spongy enemies. Like, if you're
Oh, absolutely.
like you can point even the Division 1. The Division 1 had the objective
Oh,
flaw
yeah,
of like those enemies were so bullet spongy that your level 1 basic enemies took like 5 minutes to kill. Well, not 5 minutes. I'm exaggerating with that, of course, but it took a while for them to die.
But it is acceptable for a game or a movie or whatever to have objective flaws and
Yes.
still be good. That's what they don't understand. They
Mhm.
seem to think that if it's objectively flawed, that you can't like it, or now it's suddenly trash. And it's like, no, it's about the execution.
No, yeah, uh oh, I'm gonna get some flack for this, possibly in either now or in the future. DMC isn't that bad. Like, its plot is tismy as all hell, but its gameplay is actually kind of objectively is pretty good.
Oh yeah, it's
It's-
polished, but they put the gameplay first.
Yeah.
The finger pointy ghost man. I think it was 5. The Mephisto enemies. The only like identifying thing I can actually pinpoint that I remember. But I remember I liked that one. And then when it comes to like the story thing, yeah, the story in Devil May Cry is nonsense. The story in Final Fantasy is nonsense. The story in fucking Kingdom Hearts
Oh,
is beyond
I would.
nonsense. But
When I say
they
DMC,
have
by the
other
way, I'm
things
talking
to
about the
talk about.
reboot. In case I was confusing anyone, Like the reboot,
Well,
no.
you'll lose a few points for that.
the reboot gameplay is fine, other than, of course, the color coding. The color coding was a bit like, okay, that got a bit old fast. But as somebody, that was my first Devil May Cry game, so to not need functions like the lock on and all that stuff is like, oh, this is fine. I'm having I am able to just keep playing without having to like fight the controls or just like maybe that's me losing a bit of points from objectivity. Like as I was saying, the story is tismy as hell, but gameplay is very polished. It simplified it to the point that it just it naturally becomes good. Am I speaking words, or am I just spouting
Well,
nonsense?
I think that, Devil May Cry was always one of those games that put I think they had a really cool game concept, and then they were like, okay, we've got this concept, now let's kind of find a story to go with it.
Yeah, it's kind of like the wrestling philosophy of storytelling, where you've got all your props, and then the story is just however they end up interacting with one another.
Yeah, and I guess Devil May Cry is one of the game franchises that does that well, and they kind of get away with it because yeah, even going all the way back to the first one, like the story has always been tismy as all get out. But ever like you put the game in, that first cutscene comes on and you just don't care anymore. It's fun.
Yeah, that's all it needs to be. Like that's why most people say Devil May Cry is a video game ass video game. Just fucking hit the buttons and have a good time.
There's another game like that I'm trying to think of. Bayonetta, where
Yeah.
you just start.
Very,
It's
very
another
similar.
Yeah, made
It's
by the
like
same guy
the
actually.
kid in the sky just has like a box of toys. It's like, oh, angels! You're fighting angels now, and there's all this fucking awesome shit going on. And as soon as you're done with that, it's like, oh, and there's also like gangsters and devils, and like they've got machine guns on their feet. And it's fucking sick, dude. And it's like it's just an endless stream of that, and you find enjoyment because it's just high octane nonsense.
Well, it's funny how you made the Devil May Cry comparison with Bayonetta because they're made by the same guy.
Oh, I
Yeah.
can see that. Yeah, I can see that.
So it's like, yeah, of course it's got like the gameplay is so fucking solid that it's just great. Then you got The Last of Us 2 where it's like, oh, the gameplay isn't necessarily your point, which then leans on story, which is just a bad story.
Yeah, and I think that's the gamble that games like The Last of Us take. The gameplay is okay-ish, but the story is all of it. It's what determines whether somebody wants to play your game or not. So, like the first game was beloved for its story, and that's what kept everybody on board for years and years, waiting for the sequel. And then it finally comes out, and it's basically like, oh, well, we know you love these characters, we know you love this franchise. We're just gonna shit all over all of that revenge bad.
Yeah.
And we were just kind of like, oh, we waited 7 years for that.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I need to one day you guys are gonna have to like sit down with me as I try to play fucking Metal Gear Solid with an objective lens because Metal Gear Solid is so fucking quirky and crazy that it's like
It Kojima in general is a tismy fucker, but usually in a better way. I'll say it. I don't know, might be a hot take, but his newest one,
oh, Death
Death
Stranding.
Stranding, was shit. I
That-
fucking hated it.
Death Stranding gameplay honestly satisfied me, but I think that's just because Amazon has indoctrinated me to like boxes. I'm like, I'm like-
You were biased because of the boxes.
yeah, I'm
You're
just
like, oh, delivery boy, I'm on board.
yeah, I'm like, whoo. Well, it's because
Yeah,
it's because
I
Dopamine
suffered through the gameplay because he is known for having, big payoffs at the end of his story. So I was like, all right, I'll suffer through there's got to be a lot of meaning. I've heard it's a big emotional game. You know, they had all those advertisements where
Uh-huh.
like people were crying,
Oh
and I got
God.
to the end and I was like, what the fuck? And that was it. And I was like, are you kidding me?
I think it also doesn't help that with games like Elite Dangerous, you're like, oh, I'm gonna be a bounty hunter and I'm gonna go across the stars just shooting my guns. Me, I'm gonna be a space trucker. I'm just
Yeah,
gonna put on my podcast as I just stare at the empty void of space, and somebody's just like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, yeah.
well, but at least in like the Metal Gear games, for example, there was a commentary, you know, about politics and government and war, and there was a lot of philosophical depth in those
Yes.
games. You know, aside from just run around in a cardboard box and shoot people, you know, and so there was some real meat and potatoes that you could chew on, but with Death Stranding, there wasn't really any of that.
Yeah, it was clearly just trying to tug at your heartstrings and be like, don't you like death, baby? Take care of the baby.
I guess it just maybe it was too like themes for me, but it never really tied together in a way that made me care about any of it. You know, like the whales and just I don't all of it. I was like, I don't care about any of this. You haven't gotten me invested, and therefore none of these payoffs do I give a shit about.
Yeah, he kind of forgot to give himself the introduction like he did with Metal Gear Solid. Like,
Well, and I think he forgot that, you know, say what you will about Metal Gear Solid, and it definitely had its problems, but those games were fun.
oh yeah, I would say, I don't. Okay, hate the story of Metal Gear Solid 5, but the gameplay of Metal Gear Solid 5 is like the fucking best in the entire series. Like, it's true fucking stealth. And then you play some of the classic games, and it's like, oh yeah, these games, no matter what, are still fucking good. Uh, are you? What do you guys? Which side do you guys lean? Do you prefer the over the shoulder camera that like was offered with like 3 substance and then later with 4, or do you guys prefer the classic fixed camera over the top, uh, of like 1 to 3 original?
Oh, I was one of my first games ever when I got a PlayStation was the original, you know, Metal Gear Solid,
Oh
and then I
yeah,
got Metal Gear Solid 2, Sons of Liberty, and those were my meat and potatoes, man. I played those a lot, so
same.
I'd have to say the fixed camera was my nostalgia glasses. I liked 3, you know, but I think after that I kind of started to dive off that train a little bit. They started getting a little more tismy as they started to get into like 4 and 5, and I was just like,
4 4 was the attempt to end the series, but Kojima just sounded like he was just saying a bunch of nonsense. It was just like, what?
well, and I just felt like they stopped having because I mean, there was a lot of silly, goofy stuff in Metal Gear Solid and Metal Gear Solid 2, but the themes, the philosophy, the subject matter was all very, very serious.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like as the series continued on, that was missing. Like
Yeah.
they started to kind of become a little bit just
Well, it's
let's
because
be more weird and out there.
Kojima just didn't he want to end the series like at 1 or 2? Like he was like, all right, Solid Snake's story is now over, and then the fans were just like, make Metal Gear Solid 2. And Kojima was just like,
Yeah.
I don't want to. I want it's over now. And
Well, and I think that was the reason he did that whole you know,
the bait and switch with
FU
Raiden.
with the Raiden bait and switch, you know, where everybody thought they were gonna play Snake, you know, and then it's like 10 minutes on the tanker, and you're like, what?
I love how everybody just has such an issue with Raiden. Well, but the general population, not population, the general community has just such an issue with Raiden that I'm just like, Raiden's so fucking cool. He has a sword.
Well, but you got to think about the time that
Oh
it happened.
no, yeah,
I mean,
it's definitely like I of course started playing 2 like after the the outrage was happening. So it's like, oh yeah, Raiden's fine. When you look at it back then, it's like, oh no, this was a real fucking issue. People thought they were fucking tricked.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, because you went from playing as, Solid Snake, badass military commando, to
Pretty boy
basic,
Raiden.
pretty boy Raiden, and that was before he had the sword and all that. So he was just some weird blonde guy in a. You're like, what the hell is going on? And they kept
Yeah.
calling him Snake, and you're like, how dare you?
Yeah, and then
Yeah.
as you're going up the elevator, we've changed your name to Raiden. Okay.
Yeah. And you're like, okay, whatever. So at the time, just nothing in gaming had been done like that.
Oh,
And so it was.
And then let's not forget the Tisminess that was the switch that the former president George Sears was the perfect clone of Big Boss,
Yeah.
Solidus Snake. Oh my god.
That's. I don't know. I love hate a lot of the Japanese creators because man, like they've got some really cool shit out there. Metal Gear is a great series. Kingdom Hearts started out really cool, but then the further you went into that journey, it just got so fucking tismy. You're like, all right, hold on, I gotta bounce out. This is too much.
I almost don't
We're
want to
just trying to keep track of like people's true identities in those
Oh
games.
my god, yeah. And I wonder if it's the same for them that it is for George. Like these guys have just got so many successes under their belt that somebody just stopped telling them no. And so they do the most out there tismy shit and they're like, it's so meta and it's my themes. And you're like, but stop. No.
Then there's just Sakurai. I'm gonna make Mario punch Sonic in the balls. And then he learns to play he learns to use an entire controller with his feet because the only person that can match Sakurai is Sakurai. God, you want to talk about work ethic? One would say you should I don't want to say you should strive to be Sakurai, but because Sakurai practically killed himself when making Smash Bros. Like slept under his desk and I think he only took like 1 day off in his entire career. No, he's only taking like 2, I think. But it's like, oh, that probably would have fucking killed him if he hadn't taken those days off.
So weird to me when people hold that up as like a badge of pride. It's like I let myself be taken fucking advantage of. Look how great I am. Like, bruh, take your fucking vacation days for fuck's sake.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So think about that when you buy stuff on Cyber Monday. I'm gonna be the one. Yeah. I'm gonna be the one having to deal with it now. It's no like that made me think about Cyberpunk, and I'm like, I don't want them to stress about it, but at the same time, can we just have the game already, please and thank you?
Yeah, I've kind of been waiting for this since Witcher 3 released.
Yeah, I'm just like, okay, alright, take your time. Second delay. Alright, that's fine, take your time. Third delay. Please just give me the fucking game.
Have they said what they're actually adding, or is it just more polish?
They're polishing the shit out of it and getting it ready so it can also release on the next gen consoles as well.
And I bet there's still gonna be a day one patch.
Yep.
Watch.
Always. That's just standard operating procedure now.
Which is at least the thing is, CD Projekt Red put their all into it before that day one patch finally kicks in. They're like, we made this as best as we fucking could. Here you go.
Yeah, definitely. Compared to the other studios, they are definitely a cut above.
Yeah, they're not like EA, which is just like, hey, we released this like broken product that like nobody wants to play like a month in, but we'll patch it in like a year or so it's actually good. No, fucking make it good in the beginning and then just keep improving.
I don't know, for a while there, Bethesda took that crown.
Oh yeah, with Fallout 76.
God, that was so broken on launch.
Although, what was more broken, Fallout 76 or Anthem?
I would say Fallout 76 because it actually had potential. I think Anthem was dead on arrival.
Yeah,
That's-
and of the two, I haven't played either, but I heard so much more about it.
I wanted Anthem to work out so bad because it's BioWare, man.
Yeah, but BioWare's strength has never been games as a service. They were just trying
yeah,
to
no.
copy the
Yeah.
the Destiny model. But if they had, stuck with more story, and I heard that on top of all the game issues that Anthem had, the story was one of the weakest points as well.
It was.
So I mean, that's not typical BioWare fashion.
Yeah, it's so weird. You can see the hints of BioWare writing, and you're just like, oh, this is gonna be good. This is gonna be good, and then you play a fucking janky ass mech game that you're like, okay, and then you're like, oh, NPC, tell me about your hopes and dreams and who you are as a person. I like getting in my mech and shooting things. Oh.
See, that actually could have worked if they just got the voice actor from Garrus and had him play all the characters. I'd have listened to the shit out of that story.
Can I wait a bit? I got some calibrations to fix.
Oh, the dude's voice is butter.
Yeah, he's the if you ever played the Division, he's the fucking voice of your little robot thing, and I just want to try to make him talk all the time. Now entering the dead zone.
And you just look at him like, say the word calibrations, please. I need it.
He
can't
does.
come and leave."
He says Isaac calibrated in fucking Division 2, and you're just like, thank you.
You know what always really stuck out to me in the Division 2 is there's one mission where your little robot helper fucks up for like half a second.
Mm-hmm.
And one guy just snaps and calls him a piece of shit fucking wristwatch. And I'm like, whoa, that was a bit much. Like, he does all of the heavy lifting for you fuckers. I don't remember why, but I was just like, wow, that seemed really uncalled for. Isaac is super helpful.
Oh, I meant to.
It's a bit robophobic.
I want to bring this up because this is definitely a conversation I've had with Eli. When you guys play video games, how do you normally proceed? Are you like Goopy Goblin Gamer Brain, where you just gotta go at it full force, or do you take your time and actually try to like digest it properly? Well, not properly, but you know what I mean.
I guess it depends on the game, and what kind of game it is. I usually, if it's any kind of an RPG, I tend to be a completionist. I do like all the side quests and shit and level up as far as I can before I proceed.
Witcher 3 must have fucking stressed you the hell out then.
Oh, Jesus. So much immersion, though.
Yeah, that's true.
For me, it's about the first opening of the game will set the tone. So if it opens up and it's like really fast paced, fucking goblin brain shit, I'm like, okay, I'm on that vibe now. So every time after that it forces me to slow down, I'm just gonna get annoyed. Whereas
Okay,
if it
that's
starts off,
true.
we're going into a story, there's a whole world to build, we're gonna immerse you. I'm like, okay, let's take a chill pill and we'll fucking absorb this.
Okay, I wanted to ask.
I think my biggest problem is like with games like let's say like Fallout, for example, where you can kind of design your own character.
Mm-hmm.
I have a tendency to restart like a billion times because I want to have like all the different play styles. Like I want to have a character that's a sniper and one that's a heavy gunner, and just so I end up playing the beginning of the game like a billion times.
It's the Skyrim issue where no matter
Yeah,
what, you always devolve into stealth archer.
Oh God, and Skyrim! I don't know what it is about Skyrim, but I swear to God, every time, I'm like, oh, I'm gonna be a two-handed Nord, or I'm gonna be the mage this time. I've got this every fucking time because that's the only way I could do that combat is the fucking sneaky archer. So
Really?
It's
I always devolved to sword and shield because it's fucking broken in that game.
oh man, sneaky archer is not only does it look ridiculously cool compared to like all the other armor sets in the game, but it's just so powerful.
I always devolve into sword and magic, so I'm always just swinging my arms like Fry in that episode of Futurama where he's a battle droid and he just starts just rotating his arms. That's me, but faster in Skyrim. And one of my hands is on fire.
I think the coolest build you can have, and you do need mods to make it viable, is the conjuring. If you're able to just conjure the sword and you conjure two of the fucking things,
Mm.
looks fucking cool as shit. But you need mods so that conjured weapons actually scale to your level, so
Hmm.
they don't stay the same as they are in the beginning. It's like
So-
the magic was broken in that game, but mods fixed it so easily.
So-
So easily that it was actually embarrassing that the devs never thought of it.
So the reason I was
Right.
asking that is because the common joke I like to make with Eli is like he plays games like he actively hates them, because when we were playing the Division, he's just sprinting and he's completed missions for me because I'm like, I'm not gonna sprint there, and like I'm not gonna just do this. I'm gonna take my time and get there, and then he just completes missions for me. I'm like, okay, you're in my game. Could you kind of stop? And then he just keeps doing it. I was like, okay.
Yeah, I have a friend. When I first he got me into World of Warcraft many years ago, and he was very much like that. You know, he wanted to rush through all the story stuff and level up and get to the end game content as quickly as possible. So, you know, he was like power level, just complete as many quests as you can, as fast as you can, and then and then we get to the end game, and I'm like, this is boring, and I don't care about it at all.
Yeah, it's like when people act like that, you're almost like, whoa, calm down, calm, take a
Yeah,
chill.
no, forget the rush, enjoy the journey, it's
Yeah.
like,
And then he also told me when he also told me that he reads ahead with subtitles. So when he finishes the sentence, if it's got like skippable things, like as in like you can skip the line of dialogue, like in Mass Effect, he'll read the end of the sentence, then skip to the next line. And it's just like, whoa, that's kind of a punch in the slap to the face of the voice actor
well,
and the
especially with
animators.
games like those where the dialogue is like a huge part of it.
It's really
Yeah, I think I've
interesting.
like replayed Mass Effect just for the sake of like hearing all the different conversations you can have, like all the incidental conversations that are happening on the ship that you missed the first time around.
Dude, like,
It's content.
you want to talk about like my most replayed games? Metal Gear Solid 4, I have completed 54 times. Mass Effect 2, I have completed 35 times. I fucking love me some Mass Effect. Like I could watch Morden fucking singing Gilbert and Sullivan all day.
I don't know. I got kind of burned on 3, and then I played Andromeda when it first came out, and I had a lot of questions.
Andromeda has the same issue with Phantom Pain. Best gameplay in the series, horrible story.
Yeah.
Best gameplay. That doesn't sound right.
Oh, I enjoyed the mobility more so than like, cause okay, playing on PC, Mass Effect, you're limited to the mouse and keyboard, and I kind of have my preference of if I'm playing a third-person game, I want a controller, just because I don't need the precise nature of a mouse and keyboard.
Oh, you don't play sniper. In Mass Effect, I'm always on the snipers. So
Oh no,
like
I'm a
first person most of the game anyway.
I'm a soldier, so I play specifically assault rifles and shotguns. So yeah,
But then you don't get to use the Black Widow 2 in the third game, which has the chunkiest, sexiest gun sound in any.
oh yeah,
game
no,
ever.
I fucking used it in
It's
Mass
so
Effect
nice.
2. The uh,
How did we get onto this?
because we got distracted.
Tangents!
Yeah, okay. Jim, continue before we interrupt
Sorry,
your
Jim.
ass. No, don't be sorry to him. You don't mean that.
No, it was a statement. Jim is sorry.
Your patterns. Your patterns.
I don't know what it is when it's full screen. It just loops it for like a second.
Your patterns
And I have to
whenever they want
exit.
during a battle to deal with different circumstances. Many people enjoy the paradigm system, but other people do not like it so much. Players have the ability to restart a battle if it does not go well, which you may or may not find useful depending on your personal preference. You might also find weapon leveling useful, but that's only if you find weapon leveling useful. So whether or not you find weapon leveling useful is down to how useful you ultimately find weapon leveling. You can save the game if you want sometimes. The video game has graphics and sound. The graphics are seen with your eyes and the sound is heard by your ears. When you start the game, the graphics and the sound will...
Okay, so
I know he's being a disingenuous twat waffle, but it just makes me want to jump over to like Mahler's Dark Souls 2 series.
Yes.
If you want an example of objective game criticism, go watch the entire series. It's worth it. It's fantastic. I love Dark Souls 2, but he breaks the shit out of it.
Mm-hmm. Despite like the one error he made with like the jester armor, which is
but
fine.
he admits that.
Yeah, he
Like,
admitted it in his Force Awakens critique. Yeah, he's like, oh, I made this mistake because I just didn't know about it.
Yeah, but as far as just breaking down the game, he'll show like, the hitboxes are terrible, and here's why.
Yeah,
And here's an example of being terrible.
you can.
And I only found out like semi recently that Metal was whose footage he was using.
Yeah,
I thought it was
Metal and Fortia, I believe.
So
Yeah.
you can objectively rate graphics. Why does everybody think you can't? Like, there's a moment like Black Panther is like one of the moments in like movies you could say like, oh no, that CGI is shit. Specifically when him and Killmonger having that fight in the weird subway tunnel thing.
Oh yeah, no,
It's
that
just
was like Blade 2 levels of CGI.
So when it comes to video games, you kind of can, depending on its art style. Final Fantasy is going more on a realistic.
And I mean, look at old school Final Fantasy VII. I mean, we're talking polygons here, but that game is still beloved, and people still go back and play the original, even though the remake put so much pressure on graphics. But people go back because the story and the gameplay are amazing. So, graphics are definitely part of it, and I'll be the first to admit, I was never somebody who put a lot of stock into graphics, but I went back and tried to play some of the old PS1 games that I grew up on, and yeah, it's hard because my eyes have adjusted to these higher quality graphics now.
With me, it's kind of based on, like, I kind of then turn into the Goopy Goblin gamer brain. Star Wars Bounty Hunter used to be one of my favorite Star Wars games, and then I remembered as I was playing it on my PS4, I was like, oh, these controls are ass.
Yeah, but that's the thing, if the game is fun enough or the story is well written enough, it's gonna suck you in regardless.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, you can certainly grade graphics just like you can grade any other part of the game. He makes that stab about weapon leveling, and it's like, well, but he doesn't even tell us what that is.
I was about to say weapon leveling. It just depends on the game. Does this game greatly depend on its weapon leveling? If it does, then you need to go into more points on that, because if it's just this optional thing, then yeah, it doesn't matter, and you could just say, weapon leveling doesn't affect much, you can do it if you want to. But if it greatly depends on it, it's like, weapon leveling is very integral to how easily you can progress through the story. If you, say, go through with this level 1 broadsword through the final dungeon, you're going to have a lot harder time.
Or you could say an extra thing to grind, because if you have to level your character and their equipment, that can be a way for the game to just feel really padded out. Like, there's ways that it actually affects the quality of the game beyond just, do you need this or don't you?
Mm-hmm.
Well, and it wouldn't be the first Final Fantasy where you had to, level up your equipment, but each one of them has kind of gone about that in different ways. But as somebody who's never played Final Fantasy 13, just watching his objective review, I have no idea what their version of weapon leveling even is. So I can't really, there's nothing for me to comment on or take away from this video because he's not saying anything.
Also, you can save if you want. It's like, okay, is it specific save points? Do you just pause the game?
It's probably got autosave.
Or is it like Resident Evil where you need a resource to do it? Do you need like some sort of special thing?
Yeah, we don't know, and unless we have actually played the game, we're not going to have any insight. He's not telling us anything.
His critique is poor.
A little bit.
Almost at the same time, letting you know that the game has started. There is also text which players can read, if they can read. If you buy Final Fantasy 13 and you like it, then you like Final Fantasy 13. If you buy Final Fantasy 13 and you don't like it, then you don't like Final Fantasy 13. It has things in it that some people might enjoy, but other people who have different ideas of what is enjoyable may not actually enjoy it. In conclusion, Final Fantasy 13 is a video game. It scores numbers out of a number. Buy it. Or don't buy it. With money.
This is
Or the barter system, if
this is
the barter
painful.
system is available in your particular region.
Jim, you falling asleep? Jim.
Republican. Well, wasn't that fun?
Okay.
On a serious note, I do apologise for not having...
Did you hear that last part, Luke?
Yep. And I think that's like a good freeze frame just to pause him on his gaping mouth and jowl.
Oh, are you sure? He might eat you.
Nah, he'll just eat the camera. And then we'll just get the footage as it descends into the pits.
No, what if his mouth, like, it start like Samara from The Ring? His face just starts to come from the that, I don't...
Dude, I'm on a laptop. He'd be like fucking 4 inches tall. Just yeet him across the room.
Oh, I thought you were gonna just say, I'll just slam it shut, and then just fucking...
Also, yes.
I'm back.
Okay, you two talk about the... Luke, fill him in on this, because I gotta pee.
What did I miss?
We were just talking about how, like, the concept of the ring doesn't work in the modern age because if you're watching on a laptop, she'd come out like a foot tall. If you're watching on a phone, she'd be like fucking 5 inches tall. You could just punt her across the room.
Yeah.
It was derived from the Sterling video somehow. It's a tangent. But yeah, the video's over. We made it through.
Hooray!
Right?
All I got out of this is that Jim is a little disingenuous.
And also, he just has always had a bit of a gripe with the idea of an objective statements at all.
Well, I think he and a lot of people that fall under that same camp are just under the belief that objectivity means you can't have any soul or emotion or fun or anything like that. And it's like, no, that's really far from the truth, actually.
Yeah, in fact, not having any soul or fun is an objectively bad thing. Like, it's already under the umbrella. We've got it covered.
Okay, so since I have Bluetooth headphones, I was able to just hear what you guys were talking about. No, the Samara thing was actually with Jim's gaping mouth. I made the joke like, oh, he'll try to eat you, and he said, no, he'll just eat the camera. I made the joke of like, what if Jim's face just starts coming out like Samara from The Ring?
No.
And then that's when we made the joke of just slam the laptop shut. Just, oh. Wasn't that the whole point of the new Ring movie? Is that Samara has now come to the digital age, and like her videos on the internet?
I don't know. I don't think I watched the newest one. I feel like they keep trying to adapt Japanese horror to Western audiences, and they're just going about it the wrong way.
But yeah, they should just fucking release the original movie. They did the same with what's that Finnish vampire?
Quarantine.
Let the
Oh,
Right
and
Mind?
Wreck. I said a completely different thing. Sorry.
This was 2013, maybe. I don't know, but there was this Scandinavian horror movie about just like this family living in a fucking rundown apartment block, and this fucking creepy pair of people move in next door. Turns out they're vampires, and it turns into a whole thing. There's an American remake of that movie where the vampire is the girl from Kick-Ass, and it just misses all of like the soul and the subtlety of the original.
I think honestly, I'm just not a fan of modern horror movies. To me, like the best horror movie is the Thing, like John Carpenter's The Thing, and and that's because it does horror right. Like it builds on that suspension and paranoia, and then just and then just
Oh
finally
yeah,
when
less is more, and practical effects.
yeah.
100% practical effects, no CGI, and just well written. You don't have any characters doing anything stupid, and it's still, I've loved horror movies where the characters make the right decisions and bad things still happen, because to me that's scarier.
So you
It's
mean
like, oh, you
Predator? So you mean Predator when they actually build that trap and they're like, oh, they're ready to get it, but the trap completely fucking backfires because the thing is just above the tree line and it just didn't need to go to even step through it, and it only does it when Dutch puts himself as the bait, and even then a lot of the traps backfire because it just starts wildly shooting its plasma caster, setting off like the log trap and all that stuff.
When what they really should have done is weaponize autism, because apparently that's the next step in human evolution.
stop.
Stop. Why does everybody keep referencing that? I get sad. I get
Asperger.
I get genuinely sad the fact that that's like Predator Hunting Grounds is practically the only good instance of Predator we have left, and no one will play it now. And it's like, fuck.
Concrete Jungle, I remember being pretty fucking decent.
Oh, dude,
Concrete
Concrete
Jungle's
Jungle was so
awesome.
much better. Yeah.
Except that you can't get a copy of it nowadays. I think it's backwards
Really?
compatible with just with the 360. You can't play it on the Xbox One.
Weird.
I
I
might.
think I had it on the PS2.
Oh,
I'm sure there's probably some emulators out there for it.
yeah. Yeah, I bet there is. Well, talks amongst yourselves, and I will look.
I don't remember exactly what it was called, but there was an old Aliens versus Predators like strategy
Alien vs Predator
RTS.
Extinction.
Yes, that one I remember being so much fun.
I remember they did the online game where you could be predators, aliens, and nobody wanted to be the human. But
Yeah.
that game was actually pretty decent. Like, it was pretty well balanced. And being an alien, if you didn't have vertigo or fucking motion sickness, was amazing. Because you were just so fucking fast. And you didn't have to press a button to clip onto walls. You were like an insect. So you were able to do that thing where you were just this blur scurrying in the dark.
Yeah, there
and
is
doing things
there
that-
is a ROM.
But you were also really vulnerable. So I remember it was kind of underrated because the story was not even worth playing.
All right. So to change gears a bit, because we're so good at remaining consistently on topic, with I've immediately forgotten what I was going to say. Oh yeah. So The Mandalorian is continuing to happen, and
Yep, that's a thing.
so Luke, since you weren't able to catch up, there has been a bit of controversy as the season has been going on. There's two controversies. There's, of course, the Baby Yoda egg argument, which we will get onto in just a second. But the main crux of the video that we'll be doing is just everything revolving around Bo-Katan, who showed up in the not this current episode, but last week's episode. And we have a famous quote from well-known public victim Anita Sarkeesian, basically saying
I've seen this.
she's like, "Oh, the Mandalorians have boob armor? Come on." And
Yes. And did you see, like, in the replies and shit, it's like she's just getting fucking ratioed by people drawing horny art of the fucking Mandalorians.
Yes,
Like, you fuckers.
take off that armor, and just like these massive tits just pop out. It's really dumb, because the idea of, just as I need to quickly there we go. I need to switch videos and get it ready.
Well, you're getting ready, and Shadiversity actually covered the idea of boob armor ages ago.
Yeah,
And like, he kind of debunks like, okay, here's why it wasn't a thing. Here's why it wouldn't
So
be a thing.
I didn't know if you were aware of this.
But if you're specifically making armor for a particular person and need to accommodate their body, you're going to make the armor as form-fitting as possible. You're not going to have a big, the individual boob bumps. You might just have like a general, so that you minimize the amount of the points where the armor's weak.
Yeah.
And that's what they did. Their armor looks perfectly normal, practical.
Well, and he also did a new video on this issue specifically, commenting on the Mandalorian armor, and he did bring up some of those points from his earlier videos as well. But I would make the argument that not only is boob armor, functional and plausible, but in this specific example, I don't understand what she's getting mad about, because it's not like, I mean, if you look at some games or some movies and comic books, female armor is like overly sexualized,
Oh God.
but this is very functional. It's very, it makes sense. It doesn't seem out of the ordinary for this universe. It looks like the same stuff that the male Mandalorians wear, but it just has that slight indentation because, yeah, they're female. They have boobs. Those have to go somewhere.
And it's not sexualized. Like, if it was just like the armor plates and like they were showing skin where the male Mandalorians were showing like the fabric or something, yeah, you would absolutely have an argument because it's more scantily clad than the others, but they're not. They're the exact fucking same.
Then there's this that I just put on the
Battle Laundry.
Discord, which is from Catwoman, Guardian of Gotham, and it's what a common comic book phrase. It's called the boob sock, where it's like it's specifically like it's practically looks like a fucking. The spandex specifically wraps around just the individual breasts. It's like, okay, that's a bit much. But with Bo-Katan, it just wasn't that bad. It was fine. And plus,
Batman does not look happy in that picture.
That's because he's evil
really
Batman. That's because he's evil Batman. Because in this alternate universe, Catwoman was Bruce Wayne, and that's just it. And that
must have been very confusing at school.
Yeah.
Being called Bruce.
No, just.
And comics are a fantastic example of the the over sexualized female costumes and stuff for sure. But my thing is like, man, if you're gonna have a problem with something, maybe don't die on this particular hill, because this is why everybody's ratioing Anita into oblivion. Is it's like, this is not an example of what feminists should be upset about. And having actually watched the episode, there was a lot of that sort of girl power, pro-feminist type stuff in there. I mean, it was subtle, but it was definitely there.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, Bo-Katan was getting I believe she got the most kills in that entire episode.
Yeah, so it's not like they were treating her as, oh, here we're gonna put her in this scantily clad armor because we just want her to be girl, So it's like they were very, very progressive in the content. So it's like Anita's just gonna come out, and I think she's just trying to be relevant again, because let's be real, she's been kind of off the radar for a while.
I'm like trying to quickly. I meant to show the audience. Okay, quickly. Yeah.
And I did actually forget that she existed for.
That's what the costume looked like. Everybody, that's Catwoman, Guardian of Gotham, and.
Well, the last time I really remember her being vaguely relevant, and this was only in name only, was everyone was complaining that part of the reason that Last of Us 2 suffered so much is because Druckmann was such a big fan of hers, and she had a heavy influence on it supposedly. But other than that, I mean, she hasn't really been relevant in a while.
Yeah, it just kind of shows that like how much damage she was kind of doing to the industry, because she actually affected an actual developer, like Neil Cuckman.
Yeah, I mean, I hate Druckmann as much as the next guy, but he did, he was largely responsible for The Last of Us Part 1.
Yeah.
Which was a fantastic game, through and through. So it's like, he can't all be bad.
Yeah, I think it was because he only wrote part of Last of Us 1. He didn't write the entire thing, and he had a I can't remember his name. He had another author behind him that basically tried to keep him under control and basically like no, like stay on track, talk about like the relationship between Joel and Ellie and that kind of stuff. And that guy just wasn't here. Instead, it was replaced by Haley Gross, who, when I finally make my Last of Us 2 video, I'm going to go into great detail about this quote that she said about how, like, instead of therapy, she would just write a super violent scene in Westworld. And it's just like, oh, okay. Are you the reason why you specifically had a golf club be the thing that killed Joel?
Could be.
Because yeah, she specifically said like writing a scene with extreme violence that was like my therapy. Or I'll definitely have to bring the quote up sooner or later. And it's just like anytime I saw her fucking name in the Westworld credits, I was just like, oh, there she is. It's I just love the fact that she says one tiny little thing that of course Anita would say, and she's just back into the public punching bag spotlight, and I'm just like, you kind of did this to yourself, Anita.
Well, but for her, that's where she wants to be, so that she
Yeah.
can continue being this professional victim.
Yeah, she wants to just continue being the victim, so she basically throws herself into traffic. Also, I would like. Did anyone notice Is anyone here Battlestar Galactica fans?
Not
Nope.
tremendously.
Bo-Katan's played by the lady from the blonde-haired lady from Galactica. I wish I knew her name because I've been meaning to watch Galactica, but I've heard it's really good. So I was like, oh, you got this well-known science fiction actress to play a kind of newly beloved Star Wars character. It was really cool.
Well, I'm
And
gonna come out and say it. It might end up being my J Lord of the Rings moment here, but I have never watched the Clone Wars.
it's fine. Neither has Luke. I've seen
Nope.
only the good episodes. Most of the show
I've
is
seen clips.
most of the show is shit. There's some fantastic episodes. One day I will sit down with you two and we'll just watch the good episodes.
I mean, I've seen like a lot of the fight scenes because the animation was pretty top tier.
Theo had a really good thing when he was saying his hot take that it's really strange how no one really wants to die for their republic. Like, no one wants to stand up and fight, and they rely on the clones. And it's like, oh yeah, it kind of makes you hate the republic in a little bit. You're like, oh, none of you are willing to really die for your democracy. And then you compare that to America.
Has a clone army plus fucking these magic people with swords that can cut through anything. You're probably gonna feel like, I'm not gonna join the army. I think they've got it covered. I'm gonna stay here where I don't die.
Well, before we knew about the clones, there was a talk about making an army anyway, and it's just like, oh, surely there would have just been drafts then from regular planets.
Well, not necessarily. Drafts are generally unpopular
Right.
throughout history.
Right. I was just thinking, like,
And more of
surely.
an empire thing to do.
Right.
Again, not just like the Star Wars empire. I mean, like,
No, I get
it's
you.
more of an imperial idea.
The more I think about it, it's like, oh yeah, that actually lines up. So that's like, oh, that shows a blemish in our history then. Considering we were talking about like Vietnam, like a 45 minutes before we started recording. It's like, oh, one of the biggest examples of that was the draft, and then draft Dodgers. This is now on its own little tangent.
The big argument against the draft is that something like that should never exist in a modern democracy.
Right.
Which, is correct.
So to bring it back to Star Wars, I personally was not bothered by the boob armor thing. I was more bothered by the fact that Baby Yoda is just eel. not even evil. It's just the writing was really bad, revolving around Frog Lady's eggs and Baby Yoda's appetite. So,
I
let me
guess I haven't heard a lot about the the egg controversy. I mean, to me, it was a joke, kind of a running gag, but it didn't seem out of character for Baby Yoda. I mean, he always eats shit he's not supposed to.
right.
Yeah, but doesn't he also have the ability to like sense people's feelings
Yeah, like that's
Oh.
because of the Force? So he could sense that like these are her
Well,
fucking
we've
children.
seen that he's force sensitive, but that doesn't necessarily mean
We
that
don't
he
know how
has
far
all
it
aspects
goes.
of the force.
But no, I just mean like him in the show. He's been shown to like respond to like the emotional tension in a room.
I can't really think of a specific scene where he
Uh,
does that.
When
I
he
would.
chokes the rebel,
Yeah, Cara
shopkeeper
Dune,
lady,
and then
and in the bar fight.
I was also gonna then say, like how he really wanted to heal Mando's wound after acquiring him in Episode 2.
Well, then I would make the argument that his connection is to Mando.
Okay.
Because like when he choked
Yeah,
Gina,
they were
it
in an
was
arm
because he was
wrestling
trying
match.
to save Mando.
Yeah,
So
okay.
I wouldn't necessarily say that he can just detect everybody's emotions.
So
And he clearly doesn't give a shit about Frog Lady.
So the reason why it kind of bothered me is because I kind of pointed this out when I was watching it with Eli. When you see the Kowakian monkey lizard being fucking roasted on a fucking spit on Kavara, yeah, Kavara, it's a little fucked considering Kowakian monkey lizards like Salacious Crumb they're semi-sentient, so it's like, oh, it totally understands what's happening. And that's a
To
bit
be
fucked
fair, though,
up.
they're also really annoying.
Yes,
So-
but with Frog Lady, what separates like something like that from like say when we eat chicken eggs, there's very much a difference in sentience of chickens and humans.
I think we're just seeing the extent to which Yoda's entire species is just like they're predatory.
Yeah, there was a Tumblr post that's like, oh no, it turns out he didn't go there to use the dark side energy to hide. He was just the apex predator.
It might be like the fucking Leviathans from Mass Effect, where their species has this. They just use it to fucking stun their prey. That's why they all have the Force.
Oh, don't remind me of the Leviathans. I have a deep-seated fear of things underwater. So the Leviathan DLC, where you go to like the bottom of the ocean and you just see this giant creature and you're like, if you were to see me play that, I'd be fucking squirming in my seat, and making me play Subnautica just makes me panic. So as I feel a burp coming. So I think it's the BoJack argument. Remember when they were talking about the chicken and stuff, or whatever it was called, with BoJack Horseman, with
Oh yeah, they have all these different kinds of people in this world, and some of them are just food, and we're expected not to ask questions.
yeah, and when they do ask questions, it's like, no, we inject them with this thing that basically makes them retarded, so it's okay to eat them. And it's like,
Which is even worse. Like,
Yeah.
how do you not understand that that's worse?
yeah, that's horrifying.
And part of the implication, though, at least from somebody who actually has children, is that children do things that they're not supposed to do all the time. So just because he's 50 and has the Force doesn't mean he knows what he's doing is bad. But I mean, as the audience, we're supposed to know what he's doing is bad. And Mando's constantly getting onto him and being like, "Hey, stop
Well,
it! Don't do
well,
that."
Well, just kind of okay. I was a dad as well for a little bit. I don't know. I would have gotten if my kid was doing what Baby Yoda was doing. I would have gotten on his case a lot harsher. But that's because it's like, oh, that's really fucked up. So him just going like no at the in the little bath thing and just putting his hand in front of him is like, no. I would just. That's not the farthest extent you should do, and then just like basically write it off when he pulls the
Well,
blanket off and
yeah,
he's been sitting
but
on
I
top
mean,
of it.
Mando's not exactly somebody who's had a normal upbringing either. And in
That's
this
true.
universe, the rules may be a little bit different. I mean, yes, the implications are that he's eating her children, but if the life cycle is similar to the frogs here on Earth, it's he's eating them while they're in the egg stage, so it's not that much different than us eating chicken eggs.
Except they're fertilized.
No,
Well,
they're specifically
As
for
growing.
No, yeah, that's right. She said that she had to get them to her husband so that he could.
the.
Oh yeah, then they are just eggs.
Well, the problem being is the creature that laid the eggs. Like it's the thing that it came from is different than like
Well,
'cause
if
a chicken
anything,
is
it
already
really just
dumb.
proves how bad of a mom she is because she doesn't
Yes.
constantly keep count.
No. Yeah.
Like several of them go missing and she doesn't seem to bat an eye.
Not
Not
just
their
several.
species, just
He
kind of
probably
fur.
ate. He probably ate like a good like more than 20 if I had to just because we don't know how long he was under that blanket, and he even asked like, "How many did you eat?"
Well, but a lot of animals, frogs and fish
I know
and
they
things
they
typically
reproduce in
lay.
like the hundreds and stuff.
They do for that exact reason because a lot of their eggs don't survive.
It well,
So
I guess the visual was very inconsistent. Sometimes it showed that there was only like 14 eggs in there, and then sometimes you'd see it like it was absolutely brimming, and it's like when during those times where it's like there's only like 20 eggs in there, Baby Yoda needs to stop eating them. They're the last of her line. Stop it. No, there's problems all around from Baby Yoda just simply eating them in my mind to the fact that Frog Lady was not protecting them at all. In fact, she left them in
Right.
the cargo hold to just sit there, and it's like, what the hell? If I was Frog Lady, I'd be holding on to that thing constantly.
Yeah, I think they were kind of suffering from that. We want it to be an important part of the plot, but we also want it to be this joke
Yeah,
because we want Baby Yoda to be involved, and we know it's cute, and it's the whole hey, stop doing that, and it's a lot of parents can relate to it, and so they wanted that gag, but the implications definitely call a lot of it into question.
yeah. The implication is definitely what fucks this over. I'm just like, oh, please stop trying to make it a joke. It's not funny. It's fucked up.
But I guess for me, is it great writing? No. But is it like, the worst thing that the show has done? No.
No,
I don't think it's really that bad because to me, Baby Yoda being a baby, I could see him doing something that he's not supposed to.
Right.
That makes perfect sense to me. So
it also
I think they took it a little far. Like they could have just done it once and then not had him continually trying to do it throughout the episode. But
I think it also just adds on to the like Mando is a terrible parent thing.
well, yeah, I
Because-
mean, he doesn't really know how to parent because I mean he was orphaned when he was what, a child. I mean,
Mhm.
so and I'm assuming Mandalores don't exactly spend a good amount of time doing the whole parental thing,
Right.
obviously. Although I thought it was weird that they brought up that Bo said something about him basically being in like a Mandalorian cult.
I'm gonna give that its biggest compliment because everybody says how like they bring up like the way is actually really stupid when it comes to like how a warrior society would function, and also with the consistency of the show because it's like I won't take the helmet off, and then he's right next to that window and takes his helmet off. It's like, and then we find out, oh no, he's actually been in like a cult section of the Mandalorian culture. And so, like, oh yeah, no, he's like a religious zealot. Hence why he's like, no, what? Why did you take your helmet off? You're no longer a Mandalorian. This is the way. It's like, oh.
I guess I was okay with that, but I think what is weird is like they have that kind of disagreement, and she's like, "Oh, well, you were part of a cult or whatever," but then like the whole rest of the episode, he seems to interact with her, and she even says several times, "This is the way," and he just kind of is like okay with it, and it's like
Well, I think
you'd
it's
think
more
there'd be
like,
some more differences between them.
assuming it's kind of analogous to sects of Christianity, like Catholics, Protestants, Methodists, whatever you are, It's like we're all saying when we say God bless you or God be with you, it's like we're saying the same thing. We're referring to the same God. We're abiding by the same creed. We just have different and approaches to it. So
Well, and I can definitely see where you're coming from with that. I think the part that makes it confusing is the saying, this is the way, kind of indicates that there's only one way.
Right.
Like it's very specific. And if he is in a cult sect of it, then they're going to have very strict, zealotous rules on what, qualifies as the way. Whereas clearly these other Mandalorians are a lot more, for lack of a better term, progressive. So you'd think he wouldn't be, open to their ideas quite as much.
Yeah, that's true.
when he meets them for the first time, did he know ahead of time there were other sects
No,
of Mandalorians?
no,
Or was he convinced that they were all like him?
no. In fact, he specifically is like, I'm looking for more of my kind, and he thinks that's just Mandalorians in general. So when
Right,
they
then
take their
yeah, that
helmets,
would make much sense.
when they take their helmets off in front of him, he fucking gets pissed. He immediately asks, "Where did you get that armor?" Because
Yeah, he immediately thinks they stole it. Like the guy he met in episode 1, he assumes that because they took their helmet off that they stole it. But they're like, "Oh no, we're Mandalorians. We just, you're one of those weird crazy cult people." And he just seems to accept that like really quickly. Like they just kind of say it and then he's like, "Oh, okay." And then it just kind of moves on and it's like, that's not really how that would work.
Yeah,
yeah,
especially they've kind of not established him being. If his character was that he is very aware of how little he really Mandalorian culture, the creed, then yeah, it would kind of make sense that he accepts new information. But the way they've established him is like he was raised in this. He knows this. It's his life.
yeah. That's why this is I. Which is why I really I should like I agree. What was it you, Luke, or was it what somebody else said? Where it's like he should have just been a new bounty hunter, so he's just learning all these things instead of apparently being the best in the parsec.
Yeah, because
It,
establishing him from the outset as being the best just kind of hamstrings the rest of the show.
it
Mm-hmm.
really does. It doesn't leave a lot of room for progression. And anytime he makes, a tactical error, it kind of pokes holes in their story. Whereas if he was fairly new and a rookie trying to forge his own path, there'd be a lot of room for error and growth.
Which also, so you know how they constantly brought up in EFAP how Mando just keeps letting himself get shot. Let's in this newest episode, not the newest one, with the Bo-Katan episode. There's a hallway where a bunch of stormtroopers are they're just shooting down the hallway, and he's like, "I've got an idea." Pulls out all his grenades, and he just starts running down the hallway. They just keep shooting at him, and it's just like, dude, come on.
Okay, do you remember when we were watching episode 1 and my prediction was, okay, episode 1, it was pretty okay, it was pretty decent, and it's just going to deteriorate? I didn't think it was going to happen that fucking quickly. I
Well,
thought we were going to get
it's
a couple of episodes.
it's still a gradual scale. Like it's not as drastic as it was. Okay, so EFAP says that the show immediately fucking shit the bed at episode 4. I was like, episode 4, I was fine with it. I thought it shit the bed at episode 6, where they're no, either that or episode 5, because then it's just blatant side quest, or let's watch guy who played Tonks from Harry Potter hiss at the camera for 20 fucking minutes.
No, I think episode 4 pissed me off just enough that I'm in the EFAP camp. It was such a like it was already kind of like it started off great, went down to pretty decent, still very watchable, and then it was just really bad.
That okay,
And
yeah.
it didn't really come back.
I guess I am just more forgiving of it because I guess the reference, the member berry of Seven Samurai, I guess that's able to sustain me when it's like, no, we should actually, as much as a cool reference as it is, let's actually make some sense out of this. Yes, Mando could just get in his ship and just
But
shoot
it's
the
also been
ATST.
done so many times by so many different things. It's so much better. It's like
Mm-hmm.
it's the kind of like bottle episode that you're not allowed to fuck up because it's been done right so much.
I wonder why they were doing Seventh Samurai and not Magnificent Seven. Instead of just one person using a gun, it should have been everybody using a gun. Because why the fuck would you use spears in Star Wars?
Yeah, it definitely had a lot of problems. I mean, I think really the only thing that kind of saved the episode for me was it was one of the first ones that very heavily featured Gina, and I really liked her character. So, I mean, I kind of on the initial viewing, I kind of gave that episode a pass. And I think I was in your camp, you know, for a lot of it. Like it didn't really start to fall apart until later for me. But I think the show in general, both season 1 and season 2, just kind of suffers from that. You know, it's not the Mandalorian. It's Bounty Hunter's Side Quest, the TV show. You know, it's like, but even the Star Wars games do a better job of, you know, making the side quests seem relevant. You know, this just all comes across as like filler. And at least in season 1, you know, you had like the first 2 or 3 episodes were all fairly cohesive and setting up the overall plot. We're 4 episodes into season 2 and they haven't set up jack shit. All they've done is jangle the keys with a couple little scenes and some member berries.
Other than the fact now he's got to get to Ahsoka.
Well, but that's just it. It's big name drops. You know, episode 1 it was Boba, and then it was Bo, and now it's Ahsoka, and it's like all these big ass name drops to other Star Wars references. That's all it is. But the actual plot of this season, we still don't fucking know.
Okay, hold on. So run me through it. Episode 1 was side quest to hunt the sand dragon. What was episode 2? Was that the Bo-Katan one?
No, that was episode 2 was the eggs.
Episode 2 is the eggs. Okay.
Yeah, it's
it
the eggs. And then in episode 3, he finally delivers the frog lady to the water planet, which is where we meet the other Mandalorians.
On a side note, I want to quickly bring this up. How come? So Mando doesn't know what the Force is. He doesn't understand any of this stuff. Yet he runs into 2 X-wings while he's flying, and they're just having these things. And then Mando says, "May the Force be with you." So how the hell does he know that if he doesn't even know what the Force actually is?
I'm guessing that, and this is, you know, best faith I can possibly give it, is it's kind of like what Luke was saying about the, you know, God bless you or whatever. It's something that they say, and he knows that they say it and that it means something. So it doesn't really mean anything to him. He's just saying the words because it's what they're expecting him to say.
Actually, this
or he thinks that it'll let them give him a pass, maybe.
I just realized, how many times is that said in the sequel trilogy? May the Force be with you. Like, I think
maybe a handful. At
Leia
most.
says it to Rey, and it's said in a trailer.
I think it happens like once in the first one in TFA when I think they're like being sent off or something.
Yeah, it was Leia saying it to Rey. Rey, may the Force be with you.
I think it happened maybe once towards the end. And then, yeah, I think they say it a couple times in Rise of Skywalker.
I don't think they say... No, I think it's... No, in Rise of Skywalker, May the Force be with you is never said. Luke just emulates what Ben said. The Force will be with you always.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Weird.
One of the
I know Finn said Rey a lot.
Oh God, Eli is practically not Rey. Eli has practically perfected his Finn impression. Rey! Rey! Oh God.
No wonder John Boyega was so pissed.
He's like, yeah, you gave me like 5 lines, Ryan. And JJ.
They're all just different versions of Rey with like a different number of E's.
Maybe like 1 or 2 Y's.
This one has 2 exclamation marks, but that one has 4.
And I love that he's pissed off for the same reasons we are. It's that he was set up to be one of the main characters, and just
Oh god,
capitalize it.
so much potential. Like
He could have
his
been Kyle fucking
character-
Katarn all over again. It's like, oh
Oh
fuck yeah.
Like out of all the characters that were introduced in the sequel trilogy, his was the most interesting and had the most potential places it could have gone, and we got nothing. Giant dead end.
I think that's honestly like I'll have this more conversation with you guys once we're done streaming. But there's the subject of like the morality with the Force. They kind of just fucked with that in the sequel trilogy.
Oh yeah.
Like especially with like forget the past, kill it if you have to, and it's just like, oh, okay. So
They just needed a roadmap.
So, we have not. None of us have seen this video that we are currently going to watch, but I saw the title, and I really hope it's not just a response video that's being sarcastic with its title. But so it's Star Wars Must End Ageism. The Mandalorian fixes harmful classic trilogy? ? Exclamation point. I saw this on EFAT posting, and it was with the laughing emoji. And I'll admit, now I'm like, in my head, I'm like going like, oh, was he laughing because the video was funny? Or was it because the guy's teasing me? Oh no.
I guess we'll find out.
Yeah, we'll find out rather quickly, I'm guessing.
I'm really hoping me because then it produces something to talk about. I don't want this to turn into a tonal, I agree kind of thing. After the shit we just went with Jim, I won't be as mad if it turns out it is just an I agree thing.
This or not, but the Mandalorian is busy fixing a lot of the problems with Star Wars. And I bet you're thinking, what, The Last Jedi? No, it's not The Last Jedi. Is it the divided fan base from The Last Jedi? No, well, kind of. It is kind of bringing them back together, but that's not what the inverse article here is trying to put across. No. Apparently, the biggest problem,
Okay, so
one
the
of the
video
biggest
is him
problems
making fun of the article, and the article is the tism.
is the fact that
Damn it.
Obi-Wan looks too old.
I
He
was
looks
so
too
close.
old in Star Wars: A New Hope. In fact, they go on to say that it made the franchise ageist. If you don't know what ageist is, it is another istophobe.
It's just another fucking tism. So, okay.
Is this Yellow Flash?
Yes. So,
Okay.
okay, I would assume because you know who it is, I super didn't pick the right video.
Yeah, well, he's definitely more on our side
All
usually.
right. All right.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think he's going to be tearing apart the article, and he's saying that the article is Tisme.
Right. Which, like, yeah, we could just have our own conversation based on what's.
But I
being
mean,
said.
Or
it's not necessarily making a horrible point. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily say it's intentionally being ageist, but all it's saying is, if this character was around at the same time as Obi-Wan in the Clone Wars, and it's been, 30 whatever years, then yeah, that character should have aged and would probably look a little different.
Well, yes, I would agree with that. The issue kind of being is that the reason, like, have you guys ever seen those pictures of, like, guy spent 50 years as a truck driver and it shows, like, half his face, all wrinkly and stuff? The sun can age you pretty fucking fast. And that's why Obi-Wan went from Ewan McGregor to Alec Guinness very fast.
but that's
I
also
also
just a
think-
tough thing because it was just kind of a funny little quirk of the casting that they
Mhm.
made Obi-Wan so young in the
Yes.
prequels. So when they actually lined up in order, we were all just like, that's kind of funny. It looks like he aged a lot. And it was just never really brought up again. It wasn't
Yeah.
intentional.
And I would wager a guess that, Jon Favreau, being the kind of fan servicey creator that he is, look at that picture there on, the top left compared to the bottom left. They wanted that immediate
Yes.
fan recognition.
Yeah, they're like, oh my god, that's
that
Bo-Katan.
that is exactly. They wanted that reaction from the fans. And if they had aged her up appropriately, it would almost be one of those hidden things where people might not notice it. That's pretty hard not to notice.
Yeah.
Would
You
you
should
have?
have aged her up and made her hair purple.
Oh God. I was
Oh,
actually
no.
going. I was going to say, would do you think? I'm the only one who like understands like each point that this character's been in the series. Would she have had her as much of instant recognizable factor if just a bit of her hair was gray? Maybe her roots were a bit gray.
I mean, I probably would have done something like that just to show that
Time has
she's
indeed
older,
passed.
you know, that time had actually passed. But I can tell that what they were going for, you can tell that like whoever was in the costume department or the makeup department or whatever was almost using that top left shot as a reference.
Yeah. Also, I would like to point out, my God, it's an animated show, but that fucking part, man, that's parting the Red Sea with their fucking hair. I just noticed like that,
Hey, man, us
fucking.
redheads, we take our hair seriously.
That's oh God. There's me with my
And I can
dishwater,
attest, it's something in the genes.
my
My
dishwater
fucking
blonde
my
hair.
hurts, and there's nothing can be done about it.
Jesus, I just noticed that like you could actually probably set your hand in there and it would just fit. Just from, huh? All right. Oh, I got confused for a second because that's his mouse and not mine. uh, I
Is the discrimination of older people. That is basically what that is. And as you can see here, here's the real problem coming from this meme of young Bo-Katan here, young Obi-Wan Kenobi. Well, I would say 30-year-old Obi-Wan Kenobi, right?
late
Something around
30s,
there.
early 40s.
Then we have older Bo-Katan, older Obi-Wan. This is ageism. Ageism. So, this is ridiculous. The show's not ageist, okay? But let's go through a little bit of their logic here, because I just... it's always something with the NPC media. Always got to look for something, and they've got one.
I will say, yeah, it's just rather. I don't want to like people who just look up all this stuff. It does seem rather antagonistic half the time when they're just like, oh, she should be way older. You hate old people, and it's like, what?
Oh yeah, it's just that not having a problem with something doesn't get you clicks.
That's true. I was actually watching Kevin Hart's newest stand-up special, and he was talking about like how, like it was the difference between like men and women, and like guys just don't give a fuck, and it's like, with then I'm relating it to this, and like no, we don't really particularly care that much. The fact that Bo-Katan doesn't have like super gray hair and is covered in crow's feet and all that stuff, like it's fine. And then they're just like, "Oh, it's so bad."
I would just chalk it up to essentially, you know, it's a continuity error. But how do we
Yeah.
know that in the Star Wars universe that, you know, they don't have ways of, you know, limiting the aging factor? You know, there
Yeah.
could be some sort of makeup or beauty regimen that she uses. I mean, you know, like you said, the son on Tatooine, the twin sons would obviously cause some more aging. You know, Ben wasn't exactly somebody that took care of himself.
Yeah, he was an old war veteran. By the time he got old, he was probably lucky that he was able to stand up every day. He was like, "Oh, that's the kick I did to General Grievous's leg kicking in." Oh God.
Yeah. Have you seen what's under the headline there on the left?
Oh.
It's okay to be in your 40s and 50s in Star Wars. Finally.
No, this is
Fuck
really. It's like, well, come on. Yeah, that's piss off.
Yoda's like 900. He's old enough for everybody.
Qui-Gon was in his 50s when he died. He was pushing 53.
How old is Kiri-Mundi? Is he actually older? Does his species just look like that?
I mean, if
See-
we really want, I mean, Creamy Sheev clearly getting busy at his age. So
Hold on.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
it. You've engaged the
That's a
Star
little
Wars
fucking
nerd. I must now look up how old Ki-Adi Mundi is.
I mean, Yoda and Yaddle are what, over 800?
Yeah, I think they're like 900 and
Kiadi.
something.
Yeah, so clearly.
How old was Kiadi
Yeah.
Mundi?
But now it's okay to be old. Finally.
Yeah, I mean, fucking Mace Windu was easily in his 50s.
Was
Any,
it? I think
anyone?
Yeah.
It was like 30s.
Anyone
40s.
quick? Anyone quick with math?
Well, I mean, the actor at least. I mean, he might have been portraying a younger person, but
What's the math?
92 minus 19. I like how we're all just silent, like, oh, this
9.
show. What?
Nope, that's not right.
You're using a calculator, aren't you?
Yeah.
all of our
Seems
mental, all of our mental math abilities, and we're just like, what does the calculator say?
73.
73. Okay, he
God
was seven.
damn it.
He was 73
Just
years
about
old.
So yeah, he was clearly not okay.
And he was
For-
he was allowed to fuck.
Yeah.
His species had like apparently has like a really off balanced reproduction rate. Like it produces more females than males. So the stipulation of him joining the Jedi Order was that he was still allowed to fuck for his the procreation of his species, and he had like 7
I always had a
wives.
feeling that he was a fucking Giga Chad. With his fucking 7 head.
I was gonna say, did he think he uses that in the bedroom? Just fucking. He coneheads you. Oh my god. That's gonna produce some weird images in everyone's heads. Let's see.
Although touching tips for them has a whole different meaning.
So, yeah, it's fine in Star Wars to be a certain age. I just like hell when I was creating like my sort of like D&D custom sci-fi universes where I used Star Wars, Star Trek, and Mass Effect. I kind of made some kind of key changes to some races, such as like if you're a purebred like born on Mandalorian, then you were basically kind of like on Captain America levels of how your body functions, and so you age slower, and you stay in the prime of your life a lot longer. But it's like but with these, it's like, yeah, like depending on like Star Wars technology, yeah, of course she might not look like this. Not to mention she's constantly wearing her helmet or not wearing it, depending on who you're asking.
Well, I mean, it's okay to be in your 40s and 50s in Star Wars, but I mean, I'm pretty sure Darth Vader was borderline geriatric even back in A New Hope.
Yes.
So,
In fact, Lucas even makes that joke. He's like, an old man and a half machine old man. We're kind of just fighting.
So I mean, it's kind of always been okay since the very beginning.
Mm-hmm.
They're just bitching to bitch, I guess.
Just kind of the
But see,
whole.
now it's okay. Finally.
Yeah, now it wasn't okay. It wasn't okay in the 1970s for Darth Vader and Alec Guinness to be old, but now it's okay. Now it's okay for women who would be in their like early 50s to still have their red hair.
Okay. Thanks, blue check marks.
So now Bo-Katan has aged gracefully, and now the show has redeemed the franchise has been redeemed. I got another story after this, which is even worse. This is another cast member going crazy, but
Oh
I wanted
God.
to start here because I thought this was fun, at least fun to talk about. So, spoilers for The Mandalorian.
On personal taste, did Bo-Katan sway anybody from Gina Carano camp?
Fuck no.
I mean, I only have like images. Still no.
Well, it's persuaded a lot of the thirst community. That it's just like because it's like, oh, it's a chick in hot armor and she could once again kick everybody's ass. But I'm just like,
Yeah,
I mean,
the
Gina
thirst
Carano
community
looks
is
fantastic.
I mean, there's
They're
always
just-
going to be, different strokes for different folks and all
Of
that.
course.
I mean, but I'm sorry. I mean, if everything you just described about Bo-Katan also applies to Cara Dune.
Exactly.
So
They're both equally attractive in my head, but at the same time, it's like, if you want to talk about like the skin ratio, however, I'm gonna lean towards Kara because she's got those fucking guns just out. She's fucking open carrying.
yeah.
It,
And the fact that she, pisses off all the plebes on Twitter, that's extra points.
Yes, Gina Carano gets all the fucking points from me. I want to. Okay, my eyes may be fucking tricking me, but Ninja, did you notice a visual difference in how Gina Carano looked besides the costume from season 1 to season 2? I almost want to say she may have looked a bit puffy, but I think that's just how the costume may have just made her look, or maybe I'm just not remembering season 1 very well.
I wouldn't know yet because they haven't really expanded on her character very much yet this season, but I'm wondering if they're trying to take that angle of, now that she's the Marshal of Navarro and she's kind of helping build this community, that she's kind of suffering from it's that sort of Western trope where it's like, oh, you've became the sheriff and now you're settling down and you're becoming weaker. That a lot of the Western movies used to do, but they're just doing it with a female character instead of a male.
Right.
Oh, I wonder if they're actually going to draw attention to it, or they just like ignore it for fear of.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's kind of hard to say. They've only had her in a few scenes so far, but so far it's been mostly action stuff. They haven't. There was only one scene where they really addressed her character at all.
Yeah,
and it didn't give us a lot of insight into how she's been since the events of the first season. It was more like backstory.
Also, let's not forget that her character is actually it's pretty fucking cool. She's from fucking Alderaan, and so she basically is like, oh no, she used that as a tool to just fuck up the Empire as much as possible. It's like, yeah,
that's why she became a shock trooper, was because of Alderaan.
Yeah, which kind of makes sense. If your home planet gets blown up, you kind of have I don't want to say nothing to live for, because you got plenty of things to live for. It just vastly pisses you off to the point
she's got a lot of anger that she can vent, in a quote unquote healthy manner, by directing it at the Empire. And so she takes a job that's very, high risk, very violent, high impact, and she was fucking good at it. So
it also is just like a very good, like, just in writing terms, it's a good way of using the world building to very quickly establish all of the motivation that got her to that point.
Oh, absolutely. I would say that, so far out of season 2, it's one of the best writing moments. Connecting her to Alderaan, kind of like you said, it fills in so many gaps with just a couple of lines of dialogue.
And not to mention, like, fuck, don't you just love it when you're about halfway. Oh, now I remember. The last episode was directed by Carl Weathers, and I kind of agree with what Star Wars Explained kind of says. Like, this episode was just fun.
It was. There was definitely a lot more of the action in it, and I mean, bless Carl Weathers for all of his, work that he's done for the nerd community over the years. But it still felt a lot like filler.
Yes.
They brought back the I don't even know his name, but the fucking blue guy from season 1, the one that he froze in carbonite.
Yes. I don't think they even gave him a name. I think they just said him by his species.
But they brought him back and just kind of made him like a running gag throughout the episode. And it almost felt like a side story adventure, because like Mando was in it, but a lot of it seemed to focus on Cara Dune and on Carl Weathers' character, and everything going on Navarro. And it's just, again, it's more of that, Mandalorian side quest adventure. And it's like, man, all we know about the primary plot is what we learned at the end of season 1, that he's been tasked with getting Baby Yoda back to his species. But in the first 4 episodes, nothing has changed. on that front. He still has that objective, and he's just kind of wandering aimlessly. And for somebody who's supposed to be very self-reliant and not incredibly trustworthy of other people, he seems to be relying on other people and just random information a lot.
Yeah.
And it wasn't even like they had an arc to build up to that as he learned to trust people. It was just like, oh, I have baby now. My heart won't go 3 sizes. Everybody.
Well,
fine.
and it almost feels like, like the Mass Effect games where he's just swinging between Paragon and Renegade at a moment's notice. His bar is just shifting all over the fucking place, because like at one moment he'll be ruthless and he'll take somebody out, or he'll kill a whole room full of people without batting an eye, and then other times he's just overly altruistic and noble for no fucking reason, and it's like, who are you?
Honestly, that sounds like me playing Mass Effect, where if I'm Renegade or Paragon,
Which is fine in the instance of a game, because you're your player character and you're kind of a blank slate and you get to
Yeah.
make those decisions. But in a TV show, it just doesn't work as well.
Yeah,
on an
no,
even
absolutely.
further
Unless you have to
further
be screen playing and making the decisions.
on an even further side note, can we just say how the Renegade choices weren't that much evil, and some of them were just downright useful? Taking out the gun,
Oh yeah,
the
so a
gunner.
lot of them were just
Taking
Oh
moved
yeah, I mean, the only game I can think of that was a little more blatant with its morality was like Fable, where it
Oh,
was like
yeah.
cartoonishly, clear which one's the good choice and which one's the bad. But yeah, no, Mass Effect did not have like complicated choices. It was pretty clear.
Yeah, Renegade was just, do you want to be kind of a dickhead and just kind of just shut people up? Like, there was that Krogan that was ranting while he was below, like, on top of, like, an explosive barrel, and you're just like, just hit the button, you'll just shoot the barrel and kill him early, so you don't have to deal with him later. Then there's the one that has the actual benefit of, like, killing the, gunship repairman, so it's easier to fight when you're with Garrus.
Yeah.
This is just may as well have been turned into like yet another tangent podcast. Jesus.
Well, I mean, do we since we're kind of in agreement with this particular video, I mean, do we want to start jumping into the Mandalorian coverage?
I mean,
And
that's kind of what I've been kind of merging the two. That's like talking about it while also talking about this. But we can,
well, at least Luke has seen episode 1, right? So I mean, we can easily start there and kind of cover where we felt like at that. So I mean, just broad overview. I mean, at the end of episode 1, how did everybody initially feel?
yeah, had tisms here and there, but overall pretty decent.
I was entertained, but got really mad the more I kept thinking about Boba Fett's cameo.
Thinking about it after the episode was an absolute nightmare.
Because
I'm not gonna lie, I didn't make the connection when they showed the guy at the end. It didn't immediately snap in my head, oh, that's Boba.
So, because I stare at Tamara Morrison's face more than than a normal person should, I was like, that's Boba.
Like, I just saw a guy and I'm like, oh, he's got a Tusken Raider weapon and he's got a robe. The only thing that made me think it might be Boba was that the armor that the Marshal or whatever his name was wearing was clearly Boba's armor.
Right.
But other than that, I mean, I didn't immediately go, oh, hey, that's Boba Fett. I was just like, oh, I was expecting it to be a setup for something that was going to essentially pay off in the next episode.
Mm-hmm.
And it feels like they're doing this thing at the end of every episode where they're putting something out there that's supposed to be some kind of big shocking reveal or whatever, but then the next episode is just totally unrelated.
Yeah, it's just your end of episode member berry. And I remember when we watched it and we saw that, and because Wyatt had been like saying, that's Boba, that's fucking Boba the entire time, as soon as it was over, I was just like, hang on. He was never very far away from his armor. Like, it was just over there, and he's Boba Fett. Why didn't he go get it?
And
it raises so many questions.
And
So yeah, he's
You
just
know,
been chilling
like-
in the desert.
He's been chilling in the desert, and he just let the Jawas have his armor because before the sheriff guy had it, it was with the Jawas, so they've had it for God knows how long. I mean, and he was just okay with that. Like he never
least-
tried to get it back.
at least a couple months because I hate to say this. I'm gonna reference Aftermath, the book that what's his face comes from, Timothy Oliphant's character. He's a book character. So he got the armor pretty much like a day after episode 6. So he's had that armor for 5 years, which means Fett has been just hanging out on Tatooine and just seeing this man wear his armor. And
Yeah.
it's like, I had a whole conversation with somebody on EFAP posting. I was like, how the hell was Fett okay with this? Because I forgot about the Boba Fett novels. I thought his current armor was still his father's armor. And then the other Luke was bringing up how, like, no, Fett's been very, he shows various levels of attachment when it comes to that armor. Like, in the Boba Fett novels, they gave him a whole new set. And then in the Clone Wars, he used he used Jango's helmet as, like, a bomb to try to kill Mace Windu. So it's like, alright, I guess he hasn't had that much attachment, but why the hell isn't he going back to Slave 1 at least then? And just
Well,
restarting his
I
bounty
think
hunting
my
career?
biggest concern is from the casual viewer perspective, somebody who doesn't have a lot of the EU knowledge. That armor is his immediate identification
Yes.
to
it is.
everybody in the audience. So whether the character cares about it or not, from a meta sense, I hate to use that term, but it's important, and he
Yes.
should give a shit, you know, or at least, you know, somebody should give a shit. And it just feels like they're putting it in here to dangle the member berries and be like, look, it's Boba. Y'all like Boba, right? But they're not going to explain any of that shit. So we have all these questions about, oh, what has Boba been doing for all the past years? We're not going to fucking find out. You know, they're not going to say anything about it.
Get his shift because no one back at Jabba's palace recognized him. And not letting him in the door. Like for, what was it, 5 years? He's been just constantly trying to get his ship back.
Yeah, I mean,
he's
it's just
constantly trying to get into the parking lot of Jabba's
Yeah.
palace to get to Slave 1.
well,
He's like, guys, let
and
me in.
Wait, you're not.
you know, they made the what was it, the mechanic, or you know, she made the comment, you know, there's no Mandalores around here, or hasn't been any Mandalores around here, or whatever. People would know Boba. You know, if he's been there that long, unless he's just been hanging out in the desert with the Tusken Raiders, which I guess is possible since
Well,
he's got, you know, a stick and a gun.
I kind of hate how, like, I really hate this about Disney. I'm so fucking mad. This is like the one big change that ever since The Mandalorian was discussed, they're like, Boba Fett wasn't actually a Mandalorian. And I'm like, thinks back to Legends, how he fucking became Mandalore himself and led his fucking people and shit. And it's just like, oh, well, that's a big fuck you to the past. That's basically everything that Disney has done. Just saying fuck you to, like, everything that has ever happened with Star Wars. And so they could poach it for themselves. They're going to be
Well,
poaching...
I guess I've never heard that argument. What's the explanation for how he's not Mandalorian? Isn't he a clone of a Mandalorian?
No, so the Mandalorian government kind of disavows Jango. And then it's later then shown that's like... not shown. He's accused of, like, he basically just stole the armor. Jango did, and then Boba just wears that.
So they're saying basically, since Django is not a Mandalorian,
then Boba is not as well.
but
Because he wasn't
what?
raised or trained by a Mandalorian. Like, but with the whole like decanonizing the EU, the reason that's so annoying is because you'll have episodes like number 1 where they rely on, you know, people like Wyatt who know this EU stuff to put the dots together and get hyped over the reveal.
Oh yeah, and then at the same time, you've got people like, you know, Kathleen Kennedy sitting up there going, "Oh, we don't have this, you know, books and stories and stuff to."
Fuck! that pisses me off.
That fucking statement. I mean, you want to talk about hot takes? Jesus Christ.
There's no, there's no that's source material. Oh, there's only 20 plus fucking years of books, video games, and fucking fan films and everything.
There
What
was
the
this
hell?
giant fabric known as the EU that was this huge tapestry of different stories and different characters, and you just burnt the whole thing and then go, I wish we had something to work with.
Yeah, it's like what?
Yeah, they burnt it down and then they still try to use it to get those member berries. So, like, does
Yep.
it matter or doesn't it?
Well,
If some of
it almost becomes insulting because it's like you guys decanonized all this shit, but then you want to use it to tingle our berries, and and it's like no, you can't have it both ways.
And what's dumb is when they poach these elements, they're not even that good.
Oh no, they're not even
Ben's-
taking the good
Ben
good
Solo
aspects of the
is a
EU.
pussy compared to fucking Jason.
Yeah.
Jason was practically the paragon of the Force for a while, and he was one of the ultimate people that he did the thing that Kylo Ren was trying to do. He was like, no, how do I use the dark side to actually achieve peace? And he basically was doing it by sacrificing his soul. He's like, this needs to be done. I'm going to do it. And it cost him the love of all his family members, including his secret wife and daughter. It caused his parents to give up on him. His own twin sister had to kill him. And also, in terms of I'm not gonna. I'm stopping myself now. I almost
Yeah,
went
I
on.
know. The EU is a rabbit hole we could go down for quite a while. But I mean, in terms of the Mandalorian, I feel like they've been walking on a tightrope this season of wanting to play it safe, but at the same time hitting those big member berry type moments and dangling those keys. And on the surface level, it's very inoffensive. It's just, entertainment. You can just kind of turn your brain off and enjoy it. But the more you pick it apart, the more the problems do start to come out. And I think that it doesn't suffer that quite as bad as like the sequel trilogy did, but it's definitely there. Like I know a lot of people are not happy about the whole how easy it is for him to communicate with the Tusken Raiders, and the idea that their little community there would team up with the Tusken Raiders kind of recontextualizes a lot of the historical events with Tusken Raiders.
Yeah.
Because now it's like, oh, well, what about when Anakin just went and murdered an entire camp of Tusken Raiders? I mean, those were people too.
I was
mean, that was kind of the point of his whole, like, the emotional breakdown he was having on it. So that's kind of consistent.
Well, yeah, and I like to think that Anakin didn't speak Tusken Raider, but clearly Mando does, and I will give the show credit though. Not that it happened in episode 1, but there was that scene. I think it's in episode 2 with the frog lady, where she's trying to talk to him, and he's like, "I don't speak frog." Or whatever he says, I don't speak whatever language that is.
No, yeah, he said I think he said both frog and I don't understand whatever language you're using.
And I was like, oh, even though it's kind of a subtle jab, I felt like that was Jon Favreau being like, fuck you, Ryan, because Mando is not going to get called a Mary Sue like Rey, who speaks Wookiee for no fucking reason, and Droid and all these other languages.
Translated Wookiee to Skywalker.
Oh no,
God,
that
yeah.
pissed me off so much.
It's like, how fucking dare you?
Even here's the thing. It was kind of this universal thing that everybody somehow understood Wookiee, but like no one had to
Well, I guess the way I've always thought of it in my head is, it's kind of like when you're designing a D&D character sheet. Your character has all these skills and abilities and languages that they know, and usually there has to be some kind of a reason why they might know that, or it's going to come across as a little weird. And Rey's character sheet just has all kinds of shit.
Yes, of
that
course.
shit is like, oh my god, that's crazy. But it's like, hey, good on you, Mandalorian, for at least acknowledging that there's some shit that your character doesn't know how to do. And it did, even though it wasn't, story altering or anything, it did create a certain amount of tension throughout the episode because she kept trying to talk to him and she couldn't
So she
because he
had
didn't
to.
understand her.
So she had to rip apart that protocol assassin droid.
Yeah, which kind of scared the shit out of him because he's like, what the fuck?
Yeah. Well, the thing is, I still don't. Man, just because IG-88, no wait, IG-11, just because IG-11 did that thing doesn't mean that like Mando should now be super trusting of droids. Droids can still fuck you over.
Yes, the whole point of IG-11 was that, like, he actually had to argue for the fact that he'd been reprogrammed, and he literally couldn't do the same things anymore. Like, very much a special case. All the other
I
droids,
think they just wanted to remove the handicap of it because, like, going forward, they didn't want to constantly have to work around it from a writing perspective because droids are so common in the universe that it's hard, to constantly have to avoid them.
Speaking of
well, he
droids,
didn't have to avoid them, but even just showing that he doesn't trust them or he doesn't like relying on them, like they did with the fucking Prison Break episode.
yeah,
Like, the interaction he had, like, with the other characters over the fact that there would be a droid on the ship. It's like that was a nice middle ground.
Right.
Lose his mind over it, but it was made clear that he wasn't happy about it.
Well, but like in season 1, when he goes to the mechanic on Tatooine, he won't even let the droids touch his ship. But then in
Yeah, that-
season 2, he goes to the mechanic and
And he
she's
sa-
like, she immediately is like, hey, stay away. And he's like, no, it's okay. You can let the droids fix the ship.
right.
And so she was like,
Not-
oh, okay, I guess he's fine with droids now. Like, she even has a line
Yeah, she
addressing
says, "I
that
guess
his
he's fine
character
with him
has
now."
shifted.
And then when the droids practically they lose a nozzle, they said like that trust he has is probably really fragile, guys. Be careful.
Yeah, like she even has to acknowledge how odd and kind of weird of a character shift it is for him. Because she's like, the last time that we met, you were totally against this idea. Now you're just totally fine with it.
Yeah, didn't he nearly shoot one?
He did.
Yeah.
Um.
And now he's just perfectly fine with them monkeying about on his ship.
Well, oh damn it! What am I trying? There was a fucking issue we were having. Oh yeah, didn't
I'm gonna
you?
go back in a second.
Oh, this specifically was bringing up Luke. So I'll just move on to a different thing. Should Mando have left Baby Yoda with Amy Sedaris? I definitely think he should have. Baby Yoda should not have been in that episode. In fact, I've been finding it hilarious how they've been looking for excuse after excuse to kind of keep Baby Yoda away from the action.
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting little corner they've written themselves into because, he keeps using the line, where I go, he goes. And so they have to constantly bring him into these scenes of action and violence and danger. But then they're also still kind of using, like, when he goes to the water planet and, he just drops him off with the frogs. And he doesn't even speak their language. So for all he knows, they're going to, like, kill him and eat him. I mean, and
oh
he
god.
just...
How fucking drastic would that have been? He just comes
Well,
back
but that's
there
what
just
I'm
fucking
saying.
eating.
He literally leaves him with people who don't even speak his language, and he just assumes he'll be fine. And it's like, why would you do that? And yeah, I mean, I would have been fine with him leaving Baby Yoda with the mechanic and being like, hey, I'm gonna go deal with this, and I'll be back, because that's kind of what they got away with a lot in the first season.
Yeah, they drop Baby Yoda off somewhere, or the issue being that with Baby Yoda in season 1, Baby Yoda would just keep getting off the fucking ship.
Yeah. But at least it kind of made sense, to not have him constantly be in dangerous situations, whereas
Yes.
now they've got him taking him into these dangerous situations when he's constantly going on these side quests. And I feel like they almost kind of acknowledge that themselves because they did it in episode 1, but then it seems like almost every episode after that, they've kind of like episode 2 they really didn't have a choice. He was stuck with them, but in episode 3 and in episode 4 he gets dropped off
Mm-hmm.
for large chunks of the episode. So it they're kind of going back to that original model just a little bit.
So, Luke, are you back?
Yep, I'm back.
So, remember when we were watching episode 1 of season 2, and we were just like, he was like, where can I go to find other Mandalorians? And I think you were saying something to the line of like, please don't say Tatooine. And the guy just goes, Tatooine, and you didn't have the reaction that I did when I saw the Boba Fett guy. But you kind of got like angry for like a split second. You're like, oh, god damn it.
Yeah, I was just kind of annoyed because it's such a blatant member bears thing, and it's like I said, for all the reasons I brought up after the episode, like it didn't make sense for him to be there.
Mm-hmm. And
So yeah, when I saw it, I was like, oh, they did it. They did the thing, even though it didn't make sense. They just had to do it.
no, so
Especially because like the episode ended on like kind of a high note. It's like it was a pretty decent thing, other than the fucking sand people fucking ballistas, which is like, okay. When those first came out, we paused the episode and we were talking about them for a second, and you were just like, "Hold on, does that make sense?" And I kind of argued for them for a bit. I was like, okay,
hold on,
like, they
I'm
need
just
something
gonna.
that can be
Obvious-
disassembled, loaded onto an animal that doesn't take expensive parts. That's just very rustic and easy to make. So it made sense that they would have something like
Crap,
that.
I need to use
But
my
then
Disney
after the
login.
episode, I was like, hold on. Those things were made of fucking wood. Where's the last tree you saw in Tatooine?
The easiest way to fix that would have just to have them be made out of like scrap metal,
Exactly. Yeah.
because
it
they
would
could still be
so-
assembled and disassembled easily and quickly and mobile, but it would have been, with materials that make sense.
and would have aesthetically fit in with everything else.
Yes, I agree. So that, to me, I mean, I guess that's not like, earth shattering, but it would have been a nice attention to detail moment.
It's just another one of those little things where it's like, in some cases they're paying good attention to detail, and in others they're just absolutely dropping the ball.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that's, kind of the problem is that they're not doing big offensive things like the sequel trilogy does, but there's a lot of little minor things that just kind of add up. And the more you examine it, the more you're like, hey, this doesn't really work here, and hey, this doesn't really work here. Like, so clearly Mando knows how to speak Tuscan, and he even knows how to communicate with their little dog creatures, but
he just
he doesn't
needs
know
the-
what Mospelgo is. He's, I don't know. It's weird to me that some of the knowledge he has makes sense, and some of it is like, you would think if he knows about this, then he would know about that.
Alright, I just switched it over to just Outer Worlds just to put something in the background. I'm like, I hope it's not causing too much noise distinction. It looks like it's fine.
I don't hear shit.
Well, it's
Yeah, I don't
because
hear shit
well, that's
either.
because it's on my screen as I'm streaming. Because I just closed down Watch Together. So as I quickly modify some settings, I'll admit I kind of accidentally tuned everything out for like a good hot minute. So could somebody jump me back on the conversation?
Oh, we were just saying that the Mandalorian's really inconsistent, and he
Yeah.
does a lot of little things wrong that add up and kind of derail the story. Whereas
Mm-hmm.
the trilogy does massive world-breaking things.
Yeah, and I was originally gonna show like the picture of the ballista actually, but unfortunately my Disney Plus is logged out, and I don't want to accidentally dox myself, so that's why I switched on Outer Worlds. So with Mandalorian's inconsistency seems to kind of just be, it kind of seems to be its main staple. It really doesn't want you to think too much, unfortunately. which can either be a good thing in terms of its entertainment value, but at the second time can kind of be creatively, don't want to say bankrupt, but damn near similar to that.
I
Well, it's like
think
even in entertainment, any piece of entertainment that gets less entertaining than you think of it really isn't achieving its goal.
Yeah.
Whereas something where you watch it and then you think about it afterwards and you notice other things that are cool, it's entertaining you for longer. You're getting
Yeah.
bang.
I think the key difference between The Mandalorian and the sequel trilogy is the intent. Like, you can tell that Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni are fans, and while their content is not perfect by any means, you can tell that they are trying to make something for the fans, even if it's flawed. It's not actively taking shots at the fans. It's even trying to reward them for being fans. Because obviously, if you've got a lot of extended EU knowledge, you're going to get these subtle references that your casual viewer probably wouldn't. So, I mean, I think it comes from that positive, good place. It's got mistakes, obviously, but at least unlike Ryan, where it felt like he was just flipping off the fan base every step of the way, these guys do seem to care. They just aren't, going about it exactly the right way.
Yeah, they don't. They seem
But-
to almost not be as. They kind of just don't seem to be as focused as they kind of should be. Like,
Well,
'cause-
I get the feeling that there's probably a lot going on behind the scenes when it comes to that, because I know that Kathleen and Lucasfilm are probably putting a lot of pressure on them.
Mhm.
Because I mean, hey, you would think almost nobody thought the Mandalorian was going to amount to much, but essentially, it's one of the few things keeping Disney Plus up and going. So I'm sure there's a lot of pressure coming from up above, but they have fought to maintain creative control. I don't know if any of you saw when all the drama was going on with Pedro Pascal.
yes, which
It-
it immediately. Okay,
What drama?
so there was. I'll explain it as. So Pedro Pascal was getting really unsatisfied with the fact that he wasn't allowed to show his face that much or at all. So he would continuously talk with Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni. They'd basically be like, "No, you can't take your helmet off." Then when George Lucas was visiting one day, he was like, "Can I please take my helmet off, sir? Wouldn't it be great for my character?" Like, little does he know, like, if anyone, we all know who George Lucas is. He fucking is a believer in classic storytelling. So of course Lucas was like, no, he needs to keep his helmet on. It's how we identify with the character. And so he just walked off set one day, and now he's basically just limited to voice acting the Mandalorian while the stunt people actually do the actual body work.
Did
So
he not expect this as part of the role? Did he?
Oh
not
no,
know that
it was
this
told to him up front.
yep.
Like,
Then what
John
the
was very, very clear that your character does not take his helmet off.
Like, did nobody learn anything from Judge Dredd? Like, Stallone does Judge Dredd, can't keep the helmet on. Shit movie. Carl Urban does it, keeps the helmet on. Great movie. Obviously, there's like more correlation than causation there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and there's other factors going on in those two movies, but I get your point. Yeah, it's a I don't know, and I was kind of seeing it as a good thing because there's a lot of games and fantasy fiction out there where characters wear full suits of armor, and I was like, oh hey, maybe this will bode well for eventually if they make a Halo movie, and it's just like But then he's getting gripey about it, and the drama that I heard was that he was bitching about it to John and Dave, and they were like, "No, shut up, do your job." He bitched about it to George, and he was like, "No, Dave and John know what they're doing. So he basically went above them to, I think he went to Kathleen, and I think he also tried to go to Bob Iger.
Yeah, I forgot about
And-
that.
Well, that's not.
So I mean, he went like way, way above. Like he went to the head of Lucasfilm and he went to the head of Disney, and was like, "Hey, this is bullshit." And they were like, John and Dave know what they're doing. The show's doing really good. If they said no, we're not going to, you know, override them."
Yeah, we're not just gonna humor you just because you're like a fucking Hollywood actor and going on a fucking ego trip.
Yeah. Also, that's such a fucking childish move, and it doesn't even make sense as a thing to do. Like, if you work at a company and you have an issue, you take it to your manager. If you try to fucking email the CEO of the company, he's just gonna fucking ignore you
Yeah.
or refer you to a manager while also telling your manager to get his fucking employee in line. Like, that's not a thing that you do.
I've actually
Well,
so
being
far
a Hollywood actor that, you know, is fresh off of Game of Thrones and all that, he probably felt like he had enough pull. But what he doesn't realize is that because the character wears a helmet, they can absolutely just have a stunt guy do all the body work.
yeah, they're like, you are
and-
replaceable, motherfucker.
Yeah, and they absolutely did. So now he has to do all of his lines via ADR, and they just pay a stunt guy to do the actual work.
And talk
And
about keeping true to
If
your word,
he
they did
really
it.
keeps that shit up, they're just gonna get somebody else. So, like in season 3, his voice might be slightly different, and that would be the last we've ever heard.
Well, they basically, John and Dave basically kicked him off the set.
Yeah,
They were like, "Get lost."
Was it him walking off, or did they just kick him off?
I think they kicked him off because once they found out that he went to Kathleen and Bob, they got pissed. And it started like a big confrontation on the set. And they were like, you know, "Get lost. We'll work it out. We'll figure it out, whatever." So I heard a lot of speculation that there's going to be a massive shift halfway through season 2, but I'm not sure what that's going to mean. Is that going to mean like, you know, he's not the main character anymore, or is he going to get killed off? I don't know.
Does it truly
Like-
become the Cara Dune show? Which,
I mean, I'd be okay with that, but
I was
I'm
going-
clearly biased.
well, I was gonna say, my thirst for Gina Carano, I don't want it to override my sense of storytelling.
Well, but I don't know if they could pull that off, especially with everybody on Twitter trying to get Gina canceled at the moment. I don't know if they would be willing to put all those eggs in that basket.
I will
but,
run
I
the
mean,
I will run the anti-cancel Gina. Give Gina more work, damn it.
yeah, I would much rather. At least her character is interesting and consistent and makes sense and doesn't make tactically retarded decisions. So you know,
It's almost
That's-
as, it's almost as if like they let Gina just kind of do her own thing for her character, like they didn't really need to work on her as much as like they would need to keep Carl Weathers focused, or I don't want to say Pedro Pascal, because that probably wasn't him inside the armor. But like it's almost as if like they could just let Gina just be Gina.
if they were going to do it, I think they should kill off the Mandalorian and then have like Gina somehow. I know she'd have to like reforge it or something, but she basically starts wearing the armor. You know, she gets the Beskar.
I mean, yeah, like anti-cancel.
Like, well, we can't let this go to waste.
Anti-cancel Gina train. Let's fucking do it.
What are they even trying to cancel her for?
Oh, because she fucking made fun of people on Twitter. No, not really. She basically had enough of everyone's shit when it came to Twitter and like people arguing with her.
She has some
pronoun stuff.
right-leaning views. She's more of a conservative, and in Hollywood that basically means you're a Nazi.
Mhm.
So she made some commentary about, hey, we should all maybe wait till the election is actually over before we start, you know, congratulating somebody for winning, because the votes aren't even done being counted yet. And apparently that was some kind of radical statement. So basically, because she's a red-blooded Trump voting American, she's the devil.
Oh, I didn't realize she voted for Trump. So here's
I
the thing.
assume she voted for Trump. I don't know that for a fact, but since she's a conservative leaning person who's against national mask mandates and she supports not calling Biden the president elect until the vote is actually over, I would assume she probably voted for Trump. I would infer that from the other statements that she has made.
I mean, I voted for Biden just being like, I'll admit I was definitely biased on this. I was like, okay, this handling of the pandemic has just been awful. I just want this to be over. So I'll admit if this bites me in the ass, I'll surely fucking admit it. But yeah, it's like I remember when Wolf brought up how like he voted for Bernie, but yet people called him like a fucking racist and stuff. So it's like it's possible to vote for somebody and then not like share the 100% views of that person.
Oh, absolutely. But because she doesn't share the views of the leftist Twitter mob,
right? And she
regardless of what her actual political affiliations are, she's evil.
Yeah, to the point that she even put in her Twitter profile, she said like beep boop bop to the fucking pronoun thing, and I just stare at that and I'm just like, Gina, stop being so perfect. Like, if you want all the human beings in the planet to love you, then you gotta accept the fact that we're all gonna dogpile on you and give you love. That's just what's gonna happen. Because she just fucking did that shit, and it's like, oh my god, like it was just I don't want to say brave because it was just putting something on Twitter, but it was just like to in a way stand up to all the Twitter bullshit and just say what you think. It's actually kind of interesting.
You've been poking your nose into restricted locations. This makes my superiors unhappy.
Yeah, and I think she should be commended for it, not, crucified. But
Yeah.
I mean, unfortunately, that's where we are at.
The pronouns in the bio, is that really that common? Like, does pretty much every Twitter account say their fucking pronouns?
A lot of them do now because it's part of the far left thing. You have to be respectful of everybody's pronouns, and so basically to show that you've drank the Kool-Aid or whatever, you have to put the pronouns in your bio. So it's actually kind of rare to see someone who doesn't have them.
Weird. I think it's like the Twitter account I have where I basically just use it to browse, see what's going on. I think my bio is just fucking some emojis.
I don't have a Twitter
I know,
bio.
it's just
Well,
a
actually, hold on. I'll quickly tab out and just go on to the good old Twitter. I think I just have like, yeah, Let's Player and Streamer YouTube. Oh, hold on. I didn't put the spacing there. Let's Player and Streamer, and then I put my YouTube and Twitch. Yeah, it's just like I don't particularly care about that kind of stuff.
I try to avoid Twitter like the plague most of the time. It's generally a cesspool of just far left echo chamber, but
Oh, that's right. I don't have my shock cannon out. I like how we kind of just got into this like thing. We talked about what's been happening with Gina, and then and like not so much about the actual Mandalorian. It's past a little bit of not season 2, a little bit past episode 2. I do want to say like I will be interested in seeing how, knowing that he can kind of technically remove his helmet, I'm wondering how that's gonna change things, because we saw him lifting up his helmet to eat, and some people, like Star Wars Explained, keep saying like, oh, he'll lift up his helmet finally, like maybe in front of like the armor, and then I went like, no, that's not gonna happen, because especially if like, were they just have the rumors been confirmed? I don't remember if we mentioned that part.
I mean, Doomcock supposedly had a pretty reliable source, and multiple
Yeah.
people were referenced. Like, I remember seeing a news article that even mentioned Doomcock by name, and I was like, "Whoa, he must have had some pretty legit sources if even they're referencing it." So I think
Yeah.
it's legit.
Yeah, which
I mean,
what-
we all know his sources are legit because of predictions for Rise of Skywalker. Like, he
Mhm.
basically leaked the entire movie, and we all thought it was a joke because there's no way they were actually going to make something that stupid, and then they did.
Yeah, I was gonna say we hoped they weren't, but
what was weird was that they were like what was weird was the fact that it was just all the actual movie was worse than the leaks. Remember the leaks were talking about like Matt Smith being like somebody that the Emperor would drain or something. Like it was possibly
Oh no,
rumored
I'm
that he was gonna
talking
be
about like
the son.
script or the playback line that they did on EFAP 65, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Where they actually just went through it and it laid out the plot of the movie and all the nonsense.
God, I think with all this like subversion and all this bullshit modern storytelling, I'm terrified of what Lord of the Rings will be.
I'm just so
hey,
glad.
at least we have Unity to look forward to.
Yeah, well, uh, I'm
Who doesn't want to see naked elves? Come on, naked hobbits. There's strokes for everybody.
well, I agree, but at the same time, that's not the point. That's not the point of Tolkien's universe. it's the like you see somebody with just like an erection, you just almost want to just go stop it, stop it. It's not the point. Tolkien was a Roman Catholic. He's he's not thinking that way. I don't know, when you try to make suddenly Tolkien's universe more like The Witcher, I then get a little bit worried because
Yeah, they're just doing the same thing they always do. They're like, oh, this thing was popular. Let's make it
Yeah,
a thing.
Game
They
of
just
Thrones.
completely forget what made it worth remaking in the first place.
Yeah, like Game of Thrones has nudity. Let's just do that.
Well, they probably look at Game of Thrones was really popular. The Witcher was pretty well received. That's a whole nother topic, but
I
overall, most people were pretty happy with it. So they were like, okay, this did well, so clearly we should, do something similar. And it's like, no, just do Lord of the Rings properly.
mm-hmm.
If you want any sort of inspiration about how to do Lord of the Rings properly, if anything, maybe go look at the Peter Jackson movies and goes, hey, these were pretty well received. Let's use these as sources of inspiration.
Yeah, what can we do and yet be different at the same time? It's insane, I know.
Yeah, it's weird that you would think that these people who are handling a lot of money and these big projects and heavy investment, and it's like you would think that they would make some decisions that are good, but no.
Yeah, it's just absolutely insane. Alright. I think with that, ladies and gentlemen, we shall leave it there. Ninja, would you like to leave your information in case any person from the far off future discovers this and they're like, "Oh, everybody's interesting here. Where can I find this person?"
I'm still in the process of getting set up on that. I am still redrafting my initial script, so I don't have any videos or anything up yet. But
Okay.
I will in the future have something for them to come find. That's for sure.
And when that happens, let me know, and I will then put that information in the description for this, because even though nobody's here yet, I do want the people that are here to also be observed as well, not just me. So
Well, I cannot be observed.
Oh.
Write a book.
I don't have a channel or anything like that, so there's really nothing for me to link.
Luke, write a book, and then I'll point the book at them, at this non-existent audience so far.
Make it sound like a threat.
Write a book. Just like, no, there's somebody watching. One congruent viewer. This one person. This one person's just like, oh, this is really fascinating.
I think that might be you keeping your eye on the chat.
No, I don't. Wait, do they seriously count the person looking at the studio? Hopefully they don't. Hopefully they don't count the person that's actually doing the streaming and keeping an eye on.
I mean, you are technically viewing it.
But I'm viewing it more in the technical sense of like I'm looking at it from the studio perspective. So it's like being behind the glass, and it says like average watch time, like 11 minutes 12 seconds. Like it's like, and it's going up. So it's clearly not just me, or else the watch time would have been the whole 3 hours and X amount of seconds.
3 hours, man. Pulling it short, man.
I know we're like this is incredibly short, but you know, just gotta we've set up the standard. Now we gotta roll with it. So, thank you one person for watching. It's like this guy is the ultimate gamer. And we shall hopefully. I know you'll see me. Not sure about these guys, but we'll see you sometime. And thank you and